I didn't buy this BMW M5 Competition from auction, somebody else did. But then they sold it to me after they realised one problem, which was stopping them from fixing it. Buying a crash damaged car is risky as it is, but buying it off someone who couldn't fix it adds a lot more to the risk. Now you're probably like me, find a car that you want or dream of owning, search on eBay or Auto Trader and then put lowest price first. Or does that just make me a cheapskate? Now I actually found this BMW M5 listed on eBay for £33,500. And usually these cars go for around £50,000, if not more. And it's easy to see why. The BMW M5 Comp comes with a 4.4 twin-turbo V8, which has over 600 bhp. Now, I actually managed to get it cheaper than that, but we'll get onto what I paid for it later in the video, because I'm kind of thinking now, it might not have been worth it. But on first impressions, okay, some of you might think I'm mad, but even on the listing, I didn't think this car looked that bad. It's had a front end knock, but everything really, from the wing backwards, looks in half decent shape. And for someone like me, who doesn't really have any type of skill, is more of a driveway mechanic that self-teaches himself, I thought this could be an easy repair. But oh, is this gonna be far from an easy repair. The guy I bought this from was kind of like myself. He was repairing cars on his driveway. So looking at the auction photos of this car, you could see, well, it needs a front end, there's no bonnet, there's no bumper, headlights, and maybe a few coolers as well. The driver's side wing looks repairable. The passenger side wing, not so much. It would need a new inner wing, which just requires a bit of welding. And all of the airbags are blown, including the dashboard and both of the curtain airbags. So really looking at that damage, we could probably repair this on a driveway with no real special tools required and have a decent M5 for a lot less than the normal price. But as always, when dealing with cars, as I'm sure you'll know, it's not as easy as that. And in this specific case, there's two reasons why it's not as easy as that. And the first reason Hannah's going to explain, and why is that?
The engine doesn't run. Yeah,
this is a non-runner because BMW decided to put their oil coolers at the very bottom, at the front of the engine. So if they're ever in any accident, they get absolutely smashed to bits. So this has dropped all its oil out, and you don't need to be a genius to know what happens to an engine when it has no oil in it. We've just got to hope it wasn't ran without it. The oil cooler looks like it's just pulled out of the... There's the top of the oil cooler and there's the pipe. It looks like it's kind of like... I think it's definitely knackered. I mean, that is... Yeah, that's definitely knackered, but it's like pulled out. I think you've got like a oil feed in here, and then the oil return in there. Look, there's the auxiliary belt. Oh dear, what's that? Oh, is that a pulley there? Oh, that, ow! Ah! That looks like a water pump. Oh my god, there's so much broken here. Oh, even that's broken. The charge cooler. Oh dear. Do we get Hannah's approval on the M5?
I mean, don't come for me, but I don't like BMWs.
Literally, this is a 4.4 litre V8, twin turbo. It can be like 1,000 horsepower, and look at the interior. 4-wheel drive as well, and you can make it into rear wheel drive.
It doesn't have a heated steering wheel.
It doesn't have a heated steering wheel?
No.
Check out the kit. Like me, I never used to like BMW, and then when you drive one, then you like it. Now the engine has to come out of the M5 anyway to do a certain repair on this. But before I explain why, we've got to try and get the car into neutral so we can push it inside the unit. We got power? Got no power. Weirdly, it seems like my jumper pack didn't work, so I went and fetched a bigger one. The battery's actually in the boot, so we're having to use the terminals which are underneath the bonnet. Got 7.5 volts, so why is absolutely nothing? But still nothing. So the only other option was to put the jumper pack directly to the battery in the boot. But we can't open the boot because you need electric to open the boot, so we're having to climb through the back seats to gain access to it. Unless you guys know of an emergency release that I could have pulled to open the boot, but I didn't know, so we're crawling in the back. Red. To red, if this don't work, we have a problem. You got a reading?
No.
Nothing?
No. So there's 3 lines.
Just no reading at all? What? Oh. that work? Yes, we've got power. We've got power on. We've got power on. It must just be really dead. Yeah, our digital display. Okay, so we've got digital display. Oh, nearly a full tank of fuel. Come on. So, loads of faults. Can you put this in neutral? I don't want to start it, that's the thing. Do you know if I just press to start engine, press brake pedal? I don't want to start the engine, that's the thing. There's no oil in it. I don't think you can get it in neutral. I can't even take the handbrake off. Ah! I think what we've got to do is get underneath it. There might be a notch in the gearbox. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a notch in the gearbox so we can whack it into neutral. But that doesn't solve the handbrake not coming off the back. We're going to need power to get the handbrake off the back. Oh, we can open the boot. We can open the boot now. We can open the boot. No, we can't. Well, it's not looking good so far. So I've got the jack out to see if we can find something on the bottom of the gearbox. I've watched a video. Apparently all you need is a zip tie to do this. Let's see if that is true. There's the box. Here's the gearbox. Okay, so it's that lever. Apparently you pull it down and then zip tie it to the prop shaft and that will put it in neutral. I'm gonna put you guys there. Let's see if I can do this. This turned out to be way more difficult than it looks. The prop shaft was in the way of this lever and I had to somehow bend the zip tie round to hook it over the lever which puts it into neutral. I'm through. I'm just gonna get it. After a bit of fiddling around, I eventually got the zip tie through the little hole on the lever and then eventually could start to pull it tight in hopes that that will pull it in neutral. Aha! Okay, I reckon if we pull that down. Oh! Oh, eh. Round two, bigger zip tie. I'm double zip tied, holding that lever down. If that don't do it, I don't know what will. Front wheel moves. Back wheel, no. Let's get the parking brake. To the red. To that one. See ya. Yes! Okay. Next step. See if the handbrake will come off. Okay, the handbrake doesn't like coming off. Coming to think of it, this is the only BMW that I remember having an electronic handbrake. All of them have manual handbrakes. I thought it was cool to have a manual handbrake, but all of a sudden they decided it's not cool to have one, and which means you can't move it when it's crashed. So plan of action was to plug the Autel diagnostic into the car and then put the handbrake into a service mode, which again didn't seem to work. Doesn't like.
Sounds like a dog.
What? Turn off! Why does it not turn off?
It says in addition press the brake pedal.
I'm pressing the brake. Yeah!
You fixed it. I can't believe that. I would have had it.
Finally, we got the handbrake off and the car was in neutral, and we can now begin to get the BMW M5 into the unit, which is getting me so excited to get started on it. So the BMW M5, as is, cost me £32,500. It's a category S, which means structural damage. It's a 2019, and according to the seller, this has only got 10,000 miles on it. M5 Competition with the same year, the same spec, but not crashed. You're looking at about 63 to 65,000 pounds. So in my opinion, I think that leaves you with around 10,000 pounds, give or take, to make this thing worth it and get it back on the road and for it to be a cheap BMW M5. That was until the previous owner found this damage. This is the damage which is going to cause hell. There is a huge hole and big dent in the strut tower, which is where the suspension sits, and for that reason we think the engine has to come out. With the car being category S, which means structural damage, which it does have quite clearly, I don't actually think any of the frame is bent. I think it is all straight, but we will have to get it checked out. A good way to see whether anything's obviously moved with the structure is to check these strut braces right here, and well, nothing has moved. You can't see that the strut tower's moved back, left, right, or twisted in any way. The bolts look like they're in the same place. And on this side, yeah, it's all the same on that side. With this chassis legs, this part looks okay, that part looks like it's gone, but we can get that all measured. But I think this hole was caused by something piercing straight through the bonnet there. I don't think it's any sort of stress on the suspension that's caused it. It looks like something has literally hit the bonnet, gone straight through it, and pierced that huge hole. And the worst part about it, I believe that strut tower is made out of a special cast aluminium, which needs to be bonded to the frame of the car. This is a huge piece and a vital part of the engine, and it actually goes all the way down there and further down the back as well. And I don't think, we will try, but I don't think we will actually be able to get to it and bond it and take it off and put a new one on without removing the whole engine, because I don't think we've got enough room to play with here. But if it's only that part to replace, the front end and the airbags, this could be a cheap repair. But that's if the engine's okay. The only positive to this is that if the engine's got to come out anyway to do the repair, then if there is any damage to the engine, then we can fix it whilst it's out. But that could get very expensive. So I think, and I hope I'm right in saying this, I want to get this engine running first before we start stripping it apart to see if it actually works. And the way I'm going to do that is I want to bridge the oil line from here to here so that we're not going through the oil cooler, which is obviously broken, and then it should hold oil in the engine, and fingers crossed it ticks over nicely. Here we go. Whilst I had the M5 up in the air, I had a quick inspection to see if I could see any more damage, but all was looking good. So now I'm removing the hose out of one end of the oil cooler, and then I can pull the old oil cooler away from the car. Then I've got this super long silicone hose, which I'm going to use to connect one oil cooler hose to the other one, doing a complete bypass of the front oil cooler. Obviously this is not a long-term fix, but it should work to get the car started. With the BMW being a newer car, it doesn't have a dipstick, so there's no way of telling how much oil is actually in the engine. So what I'm going to do is drop what's left of the oil into my oil tub, and then I'm going to refill it with the amount of oil that it needs. Well, there's supposed to be 10.5 litres in this engine, and only, well, not even, about 3.5 came out. So I'm going to put this back in, top it up with some old oil or something like that. We just want to see if it's running. Of course, I'm going to replace the oil at some point, but yeah, it's not looking good at the minute. The only good point you could take from this is that I didn't notice any metal shards or anything unusual in the oil that actually came out. Before I try and start it as well, I'm going to remove this induction pipe just to check there's no plastic or any debris that's worked its way down and into the turbos. Because if I start it and there is, then we could cause some serious damage there. But all is looking good, and there's no play in the turbo either. Let's hope it stays that way. Right. Now, I don't know whether this has a pyro fuse in it, which is the fuse which blows off when the airbags go. I've had a look in the back here, and it looks like something is missing from this bit here, but other than that, I can't see that it actually has one, so I think it's just going to be trial and error. Oh.
Are you feeling positive?
No, I feel a bit funny.
I just hope it doesn't sound a bit...
Yeah, if it starts sounding crazy, I'll just straight turn it off.
That's a good idea, mate.
Just double check the oil now, because if it's also...
Roadside assistance. If you require support with your vehicle due to a fault,
Hello?
please hold the line.
No.
Via customer services,
I don't want
please
to.
end this call and select customer support from your connected drive menu.
How do I put the phone
I
down?
don't know.
If you've been...
Are you in any trouble? Yes, I've got the front end's hanging off the car. No. Okay, here we go. Just gonna send it. Did that even crank?
No, that was the wipers.
It don't want to go. Oh, I know. I've still got it in neutral underneath. Ha. Okay, is that? Yep, so it should be in park. I think this is it now. It should be in park. Oh, this is the decider, and this is what risk is about. I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
I'm gonna do it. Oh. Still no luck. The only thing I could think of is that if this car has a pyrotechnics fuse on, which had blown. Right, is that a pyro fuse? But to be honest, I couldn't really see anything obvious. If this don't do it, then power ain't the issue. It's a pyro fuse. So we just resorted in using a bigger jumper pack, in hopes that it just didn't have enough power to start. Come on! It doesn't want to do it. It's just nothing. I've got my foot as hard as I can on the brakes. I'm pressing the start-stop button. Literally nothing is happening. So still no luck. So there must be a pyro fuse stopping this. Pyro fuse has been found. It's definitely, well, by the looks of it, you got your two cables there. That looks very airbaggy there. So, yes. There it is. It's down the bottom. So what is that bridging? And the only way to find out that was to start stripping it apart. Then I could work out exactly what was going on down there. Right, here's the pyro fuse just there, and from what I've worked out, I think these two have got something to do with the engine start. So one could go to the starter motor. I don't know what the other one does. I've never seen two of them go to the pyro fuse, but I would assume if that fuse is broken underneath, then the power, which is going directly to here, so the power goes from the battery directly onto this line here, and this is all your body electronics and everything there, and this is what starts it. So this is what starts it. So I think if I bridge the gap between that to there, we should get a start. Well, at least an attempt. If this is not the sketchiest thing you've ever seen, then you've seen some sketchy stuff, because we are connected there to there to there, hopefully. Saying, lads, I reckon it's gonna do it.
There's only one way to find out.
There is only one way to find out, and that means just start it.
Is it okay? Is it okay?
There we go. Ignition. 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 It cranks then, didn't it? I lost power. Okay, I'm a bit nervous now because that did not sound good. Ignition. Come on, Beamer. Oh! Quit it. What's happened?
I just got really worried because that oil cooler pipe, that silicone one that you put on,
Yeah.
that silicone oil cooler pipe went from being like this to go.
Oh, did it sucked in? What, do you not think it's going to blow off that pipe though?
I'm not going to stand near it because I'll get covered in oil.
Okay, ready? No. No, it's done. It definitely ran, and at least we know it's not seized up. I don't know why it won't run consistently. I know energy prices have gone up, but for a new battery for the BMW M5, it was £250. It is massive, but 250 quid. But I'm hoping that is going to solve the issue on our engine starting problem. We managed to get the engine started in the last video. Oh! What's happened? But it only ran for a couple of seconds. The oil cooler at the front of the engine has taken a beating, so instead we've took it off and bridged the two oil lines with this silicone pipe here. The engine has to come out anyway to fix this damage, but I want to be 100% sure the engine is okay before I pull it out. So part of this is what I believe to be the issue on why it's not starting, which is good news and bad news really. So 12 volts goes from the battery along here, and then all of this goes to the body electrics, which power the car and everything like that, but don't have anything to do with the engine. This is the part that has the stuff to do with the engine. I think one goes to the alternator and one goes to the starter motor. Underneath is this baby right here, which is the pyro fuse. And this fuse bridges the gap between the body electrics and the electrics on the starter motor and alternator. And if this is broke, then we've found our issue. And would you look at that?
Incredible.
Absolute scenes. And because these two are not joining, that's why the car doesn't start. But this being broken is actually quite good news, because that means that more than likely the engine cut out because of this when the airbag blown. So the oil was, no, the engine cut out when the airbags blew, which means that when the oil fell out, the engine was turned off, which fingers crossed means that the engine is okay, but I still want to get it started. Another funny thing is if you ask BMW for a pyro fuse for the BMW M5, they'll try and sell you this whole thing. They won't actually sell you this little pyro fuse, which is all that you need. But luckily, these actually have a separate part number on, and if you Google it, you will find them on eBay for $21.99. So that should be a right good saving. So what I'm going to do now is put everything back in with the new battery and bridge the gap myself with some jump leads until the new pyro fuse arrives. There you can see the jump lead, and that's going directly to the battery now, which should give us enough power. Safety out of 10.
Solid 7.
Yeah, it's ballooning. Go on, run it. I didn't say stop. We're looking good. Yeah, bit of a rest. I think that's sounding all right. No rattles, no rattles.
It's going mental. It's like,
We've got everything.
stop,
on.
got power supply, we've got like check engine, then there's another one that's...
Oh, it's flashing neutral because we've still got a thing in.
Yeah, let's get... Contact BMW.
No.
Contact BMW again. Drivetrain.
Oh, we've
open
got
bonnet. Hasn't even got a bonnet.
every light. Well, that is sounding good. Come on! So the engine seems okay despite all the damage. So we can now start on trying to take this thing out to fix the damage that's on the strut tower. But there's another worry. We're not even sure that the frame is straight on this car yet. But we should be able to take a look at all the frame rails and everything when this is out. But do you think that?
I don't think much, mate, to be honest.
We've got a few issues here. I have never taken a BMW M5 engine out ever before. We think that this engine could go down. I think some people have the technique of the engine can go out this way, but we're thinking of going down, so undoing the top mount bolts and dropping the whole thing on the subframe down and then raising the car up, which should leave the engine on the floor. But of course, there's a lot of stuff to disconnect before that. This is gonna be one hell of a learning curve. Start the timer. To start with, we've got to make sure that nothing is connecting the engine to the rest of the body of the car, starting with all the electrics. On the M5, there's two ECUs, one on the left side of the engine and one on the right. I assume one's for the engine and one's for the gearbox. Once I've got the ECUs out, I can start removing the only airbox that's left on the car, which just so happens to be damaged as well, and then work away on disconnecting the rest of the cables from the body of the car. And then next up is the fuel lines. Remember, they're connected from the fuel tank and then running up to the engine, so these need to come apart.
Nice.
No pressure in it. Hey, that one's probably not supposed to look like that.
No, that looks mangled.
That one.
Look at that bit.
Yeah. We think we have the all clear from the top of the engine so far, and now it's time to get the M5 in the air so we can start disconnecting everything underneath. There's a lot of plastic trays to remove first, and once we've got past the plastic trays, there's strut braces. So me and Liam teamed up to start removing this square brace. Oh yeah, just go back, Liam. Yes! So the exhaust is out. And with the exhaust out, that now gives us access to this heat shield, which once we remove it, we'll be able to get the prop shaft, which connects the gearbox to the rear diff. Then we've got the big old prop shaft, which sends the power down here into the rear diff. The prop shaft is connected to the gearbox using around 4 bolts. So Chris got to it and started removing those bolts. Man test, 55mm knot, that's on the diff of these. Yeah. Can you get it off with any leverage? With like, no, only that.
Is it 50 or is it 55?
It's a 55. Can't fit your eyes.
No. Show me what you used.
I'll show you what I used. Turns out we needed more leverage. And this was a point where we wasn't sure whether it was a left-hand thread or right-hand thread. Yes, did I do it? And we didn't want to break anything, so we chose another option after this. So under the support bolts here, which set up there, and the only option we could see is, well, you could just leave this hanging, which ain't ideal, but yeah, it's that bolt there, which is a bit of a, well, it's an absolute faff to get out. As I didn't want to risk breaking anything with that prop shaft nut, because we was unsure whether it had a left-hand thread or a right-hand thread, we decided just to leave the prop shaft hanging. Next up to remove was the steering rack, which is done with a little bolt you can just see here. So I equipped myself with loads of extensions and a ratchet and undid the bolt connecting the steering rack to the rest of the car. After that's done, it's all the wires which are going to the wheel. You'll have an ABS sensor, a brake pad wear sensor, and a headlight level sensor. All of these have got to be disconnected, because the suspension, the brake disc and everything is all coming down with the engine. Then I'm going to wedge the brake pedal with a broom so that when I disconnect the brake line, all of the brake fluid shouldn't just fly out everywhere. You might get a few drips here and there, but it's better than it all going all over the floor. And one final thing to undo is the top wishbone knuckle, because that will be staying on the car. Then finally, I could undo the bolts holding the gearbox mount to the frame of the car, and then loosen off the subframe bolts connecting it to the frame of the car. And the last thing holding the engine in place are the top mount bolts on the suspension. But we've got to be very careful now, because at any point, this engine could drop. So out comes the engine crane.
Oh, you let it like that? That'd be fine. Let's pull it back. Yeah, just pull it back.
Hang on, watch it, because I'm on the jack then.
Got that one dashed in there.
Okay, is that fully off, yeah? Fully off, okay. I'll come do the jack down. Now we just got to make sure we disconnected everything.
Oh yeah.
Go slow, do it slow, do it slow. Whoa. Okay.
Catching this side a bit.
What, we're catching up?
That counts as out.
Yeah! We just got a BMW M5 engine out. That was the easy part. Look at the size of this thing. And to be honest, it wasn't the hardest to even remove. Never did I think when I took on my first rebuild project, the Audi TT, that 3 years later, I'd be pulling an engine out my BMW M5. This thing is absolutely massive. I don't think it's coming across on camera how big this thing is, but the gearbox is huge, and the engine as well, the big V8, of course, with 2 turbos on top, which has everything attached to it. It's absolutely massive. And the good news about this being out like this is that we can inspect the whole engine to check for any damage. And there is a lot more than I originally thought, and I never would have seen it inside the car. First thing I noticed when we was taking it out is that we do have a damaged inlet manifold. All this plastic is broken, and this goes all the way back there, and it would have been a nightmare to change inside the car. I also have a broken charge cooler here, which cools the air going into the turbos, and that is broken right there. I thought this one was going to be okay, but check this out. I just seen that this plug was disconnected for no reason, and this bracket here, when you actually move it, out the way, it's left a little tiny hole there in the charge cooler, which would cause an air leak going all the way into the turbo. So that one's going to be changed as well. And possibly we could look at upgrades whilst we're here. And then of course we have a lot of pipes and sensors and wiring all over the place. And if I'm honest, I have no idea what a lot of them do. So I'm going to have to figure that out as I go along. I think there's a water pump, which is sort of the pulleys hanging off as well. But yeah, we're going to have to look into that. But despite all the damage that's on the engine, just imagine how easy it's going to be to do all the upgrades to it. Changing the suspension will literally take 2 seconds. It's right there. But that's not the reason why we've taken the engine out. We need to fix the frame damage and inspect to see if there's any more unexpected frame damage. So first things first, I'm going to get measuring the chassis to see if anything is drastically out. So out comes the tape measure. All I'm doing here is measuring from loads of fixed points on the car to other points on the chassis which possibly could have been pushed in or twisted. I know it's not the most accurate of readings, but it should be able to tell me whether something is drastically out. We might have a small problem. In fact, about 1 centimetre worth of problem. So check this out. I'm going to be measuring the chassis from like a fixed point like here, which that's not going to move, that's not bent. If I go from that bolt just there and go directly to the corner of here, just check this out. 117 centimeters we've got from that bolt there to there. This is not like an exact precise measurement, but it's round about. Then I'm going to go from that bolt there to the same corner on here, and I've got, well, about 116, maybe just over 116 centimeters. So it looks, that rail here looks like it could have moved maybe half a centimeter or a centimeter that way. I know my measurement isn't 100% accurate, but there's only one way to really confirm whether this is out or not. And that is to fit a brand new second-hand crash bar and, well, oil cooler. I'll let you know how much I paid for this all at the end, maybe of this video, because I got it sort of with a bundle. But if this doesn't slide in, we've got issues and we need to do some bending. Well, that's good enough for me. It goes in, it's straight. If it was out, it was out by like half a centimeter, which is not gonna impact anything. I mean, if that goes in, that is straight. I know, well, let me know in the comment section below. I know a few of you might not like that or not, but the thing is, if this goes on a jig, it's only gonna do the same thing. It's just gonna pull it out a tiny bit, but that is out by minuscule, probably like a minuscule bit, but I've got to pull that back out now. Another thing to look at are these weak points BMW put in the frame rails. These are there so if you have an accident, which is a front end accident, the frame rails can crush inwards and fold easily. And if they didn't have them, you might have a frame rail ended up inside the car. But none of the weak points look like they're cracked, bent or twisted in any way. So in my opinion, I think we're good to go. But that strut tower is far from good to go. I need to take the front wing off and everything surrounding that strut tower so we can get a better look at it to see if there's any more damage to it. There is a bolt on the inside of the wing here and I cannot open the door all the way to get to it. So I've actually got to lower the car down and somehow move it forward so I can open the door to get the bolt at the back of the wing. We ended up putting 2 jacks on the frame rails and then pushing the car forward so I could actually open the door to get to that bolt. And there it is. With super dramatic music, I could undo the final bolt to get the front wing off. And once that wing was off, we could push the BMW back into the ramp and I could start stripping off all the wiring and the hoses which surrounded that strut tower. But the more I take off, the more I have in the back of my mind, how on earth is this thing gonna go back together? And there it is, one exposed strut tower. But oh, is this going to be far from an easy job. Well, I knew this was going to be difficult, but this is definitely going to be one of the biggest challenges yet. I've got the strut tower all exposed now. There's the damage. It's pretty clear that we can't get away with just repairing that with a load of fiberglass or something along those lines. But this strut tower is huge. Look how far down it goes. You can see where the panel finishes because of all this seam sealer here between the two panels. And not only that, it comes down here, seam sealer goes all across there. And because this is cast aluminium, it's not welded, it's all riveted on with these special rivets here, and I assume it's bonded on as well. And not only along here is it all bonded on and riveted, also in the wheel arch, look how many rivets there are holding this thing to the car. I guess there's got to be a lot of rivets anyway, because you imagine the force of the suspension pushing that thing up. I have got to get this right, else this whole car could just, well, it'd be a shambles. I can't get it 1 millimeter out because the suspension would be all over the place. And get this, BMW are allowed to sell me the parts, and they're a lot cheaper than you might think, but just like Porsche, they're not allowed to tell me how they're fitted because it's a structural bond. So it looks as if I've got a right challenge on my hands. First of all, we know none of this strut tower has moved. This has just been an impact mark here from something that has gone straight through the bonnet and into that strut tower. And also this strut tower is made out of aluminium and it's super soft. So it's literally absorbed all the impact, and all of these bolts on the strut brace and everything still line up. Nothing is moved down here and everything is all in place. This part, on the other hand, is not so straight. And this front part is all steel and it can be removed in sections. This is a section, that's a section, this is a section back here, and then this whole strut tower is all one piece. And BMW will sell us all of these sections and you'll be so surprised at the price. But before we get onto the price, we need to start removing the damaged panels. Starting off with this section here. We've got to remove all the seam sealer that covers over all the joins between the panels, which should give us access to whatever's holding this thing on. And that are these weird one-time use bolts that BMW use. And I only found one logical way of removing them. Angle grinding a slot in the middle and then using a screwdriver to loosen them off. And eventually it did actually work. And check these out, they're almost self-tapping screws. I think these screws are used alongside panel bond as well to hold that front panel to the chassis leg. Once I got the seam sealer off the top of the panel, it revealed a couple of spot welds. So out came the angle grinder. And of course the spot weld drill. But wait, there's more holding it on. This steel panel is joined to the aluminium strut tower using rivets at the bottom here. You can see 4 of them, and there's going to be plenty of them in this video. And the best way I found to remove the rivets was to drill off the head, get a punch and knock them through the other side. And finally we should be able to get it off. So this section is now off, which is supposed to look like this section right here. And the next step would be to take this strut tower off. But before we do that and we start cracking on with it, there's a few things we need to clear up. Number one, a few of you said, why don't I just patch in a separate piece of metal here because nothing has moved, and well, that just seems the most logical thing to do. We can't do that because this strut tower is cast aluminium. It's all one piece and it's part of the structure. So cutting a part out of another strut tower to weld into this one would kind of compromise the structural integrity of the car. And I'd probably make a mess out of it as well. And number two, how can I be 100% sure that everything is straight without using a jig? Welcome to Matt Armstrong's School of Physics. We have here a tram gauge, and this is actually what they use at body shops, and it's even what BMW use to measure frames. This thing was £600, but it could save the day. We can use this now instead of a tape measure to get a super precise measurement. Now, although BMW can't help us with any workshop manuals or how to do anything, a lot of you guys have been doing my detective work. and have actually sent me some of the measurements of what the M5 should be. I've just got to measure my M5 to make sure it matches the correct measurements. Bang on in the middle.
There we go. Let's bang on in the middle.
Spin it upside down.
What should it be? That's 854. That is.
800, you can see here, 854. Oh! There we go. A to A, which is the point A to A, 854. That is straight. It's literally bang on. There's not even a mil, it's not even a mil out. But that's not all. There's a bunch of other measurements that we need to do. And it's just good peace of mind to know that this thing is nice and straight before we start dismantling the rest of the panels. Let's see if the strut tower's moved. That tram gauge is turning out to be a brilliant tool. Now, surprisingly, this is not a genuine BMW tool. This might shock you all, but this is actually made out of, and you guys could do this at home, all you've got to do is go to my dad's house and take part of his garage roof off. And this is gonna be our jig as sort. The other day, me and my dad engineered this amazing masterpiece. We designed this thing to bolt to the subframe and then fix on certain points in the car to make sure when we pull the strut tower off, we put it back in the exact same place. We want to be 100% confident that this shock goes in the same way it came out. Now, although we have the actual measurements of where the shock should be, we just wanted to make this idiot proof. As you guys know, I'm no mechanic and I'm far from a body shop guy. So we've just taken these extra steps, but this tool will make it almost impossible to put it in the wrong place. I guess we're about to find out whether we do need a professional to do this job, or can I do it in my unit? With our special jig tool installed, me and my dad cracked away at starting to remove this strut tower. As I mentioned, this is aluminium and it's not welded in place. It uses panel bond and a whole lot of rivets. To break the panel bond, we're using a lot of heat. And we're using the same technique to remove the rivets as I did on the front panel. Hours of drilling out rivets, and we're just about ready now to start trying to separate the shock tower, the strut tower, from the rest of the car. So this little piece here we were going to replace, and I've actually bought a piece here which we'll get onto the prices of everything here. This was so cheap, so I thought I might as well buy it just in case, but I think we might actually get away with using that, and it's going to give us another point of reference when we put the strut tower on. But now all these rivet holes are drilled out. If you can have a look here, all these rivet holes are drilled out. The next thing holding this on is all panel bond. So we've just got to heat everything up with a blowtorch, and hopefully that will unstick the panel bond, and then we can knock it off the car. Good news. So let's see how this goes. We cannot damage anything, and we cannot move this in the wrong place. Yay! There it is. Really easy. Bolt on, bolt off job. So remember, these weird sort of like bolts were in these holes before, and when you order the replacement of them, they don't replace them with them. These are like self-tapping ones, but these are the ones they replace with, and they're like weird Allen key head ones. if this keeps going well, I'm not even going to say it. I think let's just carry on. Surprisingly, everything was going smoothly, which is strange for such a big job. I'm just going to pop in them few screws and measure it to make sure it's bang on. The device is on. It's all in line, and you can see here, you see that? The fitment on the top there, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? This is absolutely bang on. I can't believe it is working. We've just got to do it for real now, the second time. We've put in those bolts. Next thing, take it all off, add the bond, drill the holes for the rivets, and we're home run. Although this job so far was time consuming, it surprisingly wasn't that bad. But I really didn't want to speak too soon. All I'm doing now is using the holes that are left on the car as guides to drill the holes in the strut tower for all the new rivets to go into. And believe me, there is a lot of them. This thing takes a lot of force. With the rivet holes drilled, I now need to remove the strut tower. And because I needed to cut this panel in order to fit the new strut tower, I'm gonna have to replace it. I've just got to be careful I don't set fire to myself. And not only is it spot welded, I found that it's panel bonded as well. BMW really didn't want this thing to move, but eventually it came out. This is the cleaner that BMW sent me to do the job. It's just labelled R1, and I've just got to use this to clean up the surfaces of where the strut tower will meet the rest of the car. And of course use it on the strut tower as well, because after that, I'm going to be using this, the panel bond. I had to order this from BMW, and it's a two-piece mixture in one tube. You put this special nozzle at the end, and when you use your gun to push it out, it mixes both the mixtures together. Now all I've got to do is apply it in as even fashion as I can. And then it's on with the strut tower, and I wasn't quite sure how long I had before that panel bond set, so I was really rushing to get all the nuts and bolts in and start getting those rivets in at this point. Okay, we are on with panel bond. There is no going back now, but that's pretty solid. We've got the sort of self-tapping screws in. We've got the bolts lined up. We think everything is all in place and ready to go. All the holes are all lined up, ready for the rivets. These are the rivets that BMW sent me. They're the ones that they use. I'm not sure they're exactly the same ones that they use when they actually put the car together. I think these are ones used for a repair. The other ones are done by a machine, I'd assume. So I've got to get these on next, and these are not going to be easy to push in. And to do it, I've got option number 1, which is a rivet gun there. I think that might have enough power to do it, and if that doesn't have enough power to do it, then we've got option number 2, which is the manual big beefy rivet gun. But we're running out of time. I've got to start doing it before all that panel bonding set, so let's do this. Come on. Oh my god, that is insanely hard. Oh my god. 6 in, about 20 more to go. With some questionable noises, I cracked on with putting all the rivets in. I decided to use the manual gun as it was much better at snapping off the end of the rivets than the electric gun. With the strut tower in place, the next thing to go on is this front panel. And to make sure this was absolutely spot on, I decided to put the slam panel on that I bought as well. That way I can be a little bit more confident that I'm getting it in the exact same spot. Now this front panel is made out of steel, but it's not connected to the chassis leg by welding it. It's simply a few screws and panel bond. And there we go, the bolt holes are pretty much bang on in the center of the slam panel. And just to be sure, of course, we can use the tram gauge to measure it. Now where this steel part meets the aluminium part, of course it uses rivets and panel bond on top. So I've got to drill out the holes for the rivets and then remove the panel again, clean up all the surfaces where it's going to meet, pop on the panel bond, and then reinstall the front panel, this time for real. The screws at the bottom of the panel, I think just help the panel bond to each panel. And then it's in with the rivets on top. Well, that went surprisingly better than I thought. And there's one final piece to go in, which goes in a little bit different than the rest. Everything is all connected up. We've got the front end, the slam panel on, just to make sure everything all lines up. Everything is all riveted, and there's a lot of bond there, which is still a little bit sticky, but there's one final bit here to go in, which is steel. So it's a little bit different to how these aluminium parts go in. I'm still so surprised that that is all that holds on this part, which just seems so sketchy. But I mean, I guess that's how BMW do it. So this is steel on steel now, so this is going to be spot welded on here as well, and then riveted along the bottom here because it's joined into an aluminium part at the bottom, so we can't weld steel to aluminium. And then again, on the steel to aluminium join, we've got to put a load of rivets down there, so God help me with that. You guys seem to be getting the picture here, and I seem to be getting the gist of things now. Most of these panels are just panel bonded and then riveted together, unless it's steel on steel and then it's spot welded. So after I've lined it all up, drilled all the holes, I can clean it up again using the special BMW cleaner, and now I can use the special BMW panel bond, and I have to use a different panel bond on this section here because it's steel on steel. So BMW sent a different one for this panel. And then it's back on with the panel with a bit of weld through primer on it, ready for it to be spot welded to the rest of the car. What a job this thing is. So my dad comes through with the spot welds, and with the belt sander we can sand them all down to make them nice and flush and get them looking as neat as possible. And would you know it, there's a front end almost complete. I literally cannot believe we've managed to pull this off. I just really hope I've done this thing right. Well, I dare to say it, we're not finished yet, but it was kind of easier than I thought, providing everything lines up. These bits on top is where all the wing mounts to, so we'll find out whether they all line up. They should, because we've done... This would have took a lot less of a time if we've done it before, but because we haven't done it before, I was just a bit making sure that I was doing it right. So hopefully it's all good. All we've got to do now is seal up all the gaps, like over here, where BMW have like sealed up all the gaps here with this sealer. I'm going to try and get it as close to what they do it, which is probably going to be difficult. So all over this has all got to be sealed up, and then once it's sealed it can then be painted, and that's what Chris is here to do.
Professional painter.
Yeah, hopefully you don't get paint all round the unit.
How do they actually get it like that?
I think it's going to be a machine that does it,
Do you
but
reckon?
I've watched videos.
Go for a nice wide nozzle, squash it in the splurge.
Yeah, they use like a flat nozzle, and then they go like literally it's like that. Before I get the sealer out, I've got to remove the front panel and get everything nice and cleaned up, ready for it to be primed and painted. But the primer and the paint go over the sealer, and this is the sealer here. Again, another special BMW one. But all of this was actually quite cheap, and here I go at an attempt to try and make this look as OEM as possible. And if I'm completely honest, I'm absolutely crap at doing this. I'm well and truly ashamed of it. But hey, it's doing its job, and at least I gave it a go. That really hasn't gone as well as I first planned out it to go, and I'm not going to show you guys because you're probably going to laugh at me. So instead I'm going to mask it all up, get it painted, and then I will show you guys, because it might look a little bit better with some paint on it.
Hop in the car, watch it go vroom, vroom. I told her mom that I blow soon, soon. Knew as a child back in the womb. Oh, told her step back, I need my room, room. Hop in the car, watch it go vroom.
Right, before I show you it, and it's not that bad, let's go through prices. So the paint and everything cost £70. And believe it or not, all the parts that we've used so far on the car, so all the structural parts and the panels and the silicone and the sealant and everything else from BMW, only cost £300 so far, which I think is an absolute bargain. So far, we're onto a winner. I also need to say that this was cheap because we need to do a shout out to Sitna. We need to do a shout out to Sitner. Because I actually have a discount code there, Matt15. I've put a link in the description box below. You can get discounted genuine BMW parts with the link in the description at Sitner Leicester. Cheers, boys. Now, bear in mind, most of this, well, all of this is covered over by engine plastics. Here's a picture of an engine bay right now. So you're not really going to be able to see it, but oh, let me just show you it. Here we are. Now, first off, the paint is perfect. It matches so well, although this side is really clean and sparkly and that side is really dusty and dull. The paint, 10 out of 10. I think the repair as well, 10 out of 10. But my ceiling is, well, there's no other way to put it. It's crap. But on the other side, it's doing its job. It's sealing the panels where they join up so it won't get any water in between them and start to rust or corrode, even though it is aluminium, but this part is steel. But other than that, I think we've done a pretty good job. And what's even better than that, when we measure all the points up like we did before, everything is bang on. We can measure from that strut tower to that strut tower, and we can get the measurement from here to here, and it is all absolutely spot on. So the next step is start reassembling that engine and getting to the damage on that, and then we can start putting it all back together. And it looks as if I've got a hell of a job with this. So this monstrosity of a thing connected to the gearbox is a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 engine. And I'm sure you'll all agree, it's pretty ugly. There's so many cables, wires, and hoses, and half of them I have no idea what they do. A lot of stuff is broken. But what we're going to do before I try and move this into the engine, I've got to start repairing all the bits which are broken, like the inlet manifold here, which is a plastic inlet manifold. I think here we have the water pump, which the pulley is broken on as well. And if I put this engine in before doing all of that, it's just going to cause me 1,001 problems trying to do it inside the engine. So I guess I better get started. Here is the inlet manifold, and this is the last place the air's got to go through before it goes into the combustion chamber. And this is pretty badly damaged, and that will be causing some serious air leaks. Not to mention, if it sucks up any plastic, it would cause some pretty catastrophic engine failure. There's 2 of these inlet manifolds on this engine, one for the 4 cylinders on the left-hand side, and another one for the 4 cylinders on the right-hand side of the engine. If I tried to remove the inlet manifold whilst it was in the car, you can imagine how much of a nightmare it would have been. And I actually seem to have got lucky in the previous episodes when I started the car, because there's some huge bits of plastic in there. But I've just about got all the bolts undone now, and here's the new one. We'll get onto prices later, but for a bit of plastic, it was surprisingly expensive from BMW. Now I've just got to switch over the sensor from the old one onto the new one, and then I can bolt the throttle body to the new inlet manifold. This is what controls the airflow going into the engine and is electronically controlled by the throttle pedal. And once I've got that bolted to the inlet manifold, I can begin refitting it to the engine. And now I'm taking off the other charge cooler so I can access the pulley of the water pump here, which seems to have taken a fair bit of beating from the crash. Again, the water pump does what it says on the tin. It pumps the water through the engine. Now, I've never worked on a BMW M5 before, so really I'm just learning as I go along. And the only thing I've learnt so far is that this engine is a nightmare to work on. You have to remove so many different things to get to that one thing you need to get to. Water pump is off. This just looks like a lot of stress. And here's the water pump. And we're only changing this just because of that plastic pulley there. Thermostat housing is on the end. Here's the new one, which is brand spanker from BMW. And that's it. I can't imagine there'd be any reason why you'd ever change this in a car. It doesn't look like a serviceable thing, but let's get this on. And I think the rest we should be able to do in the car before some compulsory upgrades.
You're right.
Oh, we'll be all right after I've got the engine back in the car and it's running again. Before I switch the water pumps over, I'm going to transfer the thermostat housing with the thermostat in onto the new water pump and then start attaching it to the engine. Not forgetting all the pipes, hoses and wires which are all connected to it. Now for the water pump to work, it needs a belt to turn the pulley, and the belt on this M5, well, it's seen better days and it looks like it's been flicked off during the accident. But here we have a brand new belt from BMW. I've just got to figure out which way it routes round all of the pulleys. This pulley right here that I'm turning is the tensioner. And by turning it, I can get the old belt out the way. And to put the new one on, I'll turn the tensioner again and then wedge a little center punch in the hole to keep the tensioner from, well, tensioning. Then I just hope that I've routed this belt the right way, because the only thing that seems strange is that the belt is ribbed, but the pulley on the water pump is super smooth, so it must just grip it. Right, I'm calling it. I think that this is just about ready to go back in. There is still a few damaged parts on it. The charge coolers are missing, but all of the damaged stuff and the charge coolers and everything, I should be able to get to with the engine in, and it actually probably be easier because I won't be kneeling on the floor doing it, but not before doing some vital upgrades. Most of these BMWs have adaptive suspension, so when you press the sport button, the ride height gets stiffer. When you press comfort, it goes softer, and that's all done with this damper and the control, which kind of all plugs in there. And I kind of wanted to keep that. If I changed the full suspension unit, I would lose it. You'd end up with a warning light on the dashboard, but I did want us to be able to change the ride height, which is exactly what these things are going to do. KW adjustable springs. It would be stupid not to do this whilst it's out. This is probably going to be the easiest suspension install that I've ever done. I don't even have to detach it from the wheel hub. I've got my spring compressor on because I don't fancy losing my teeth when I disconnect the top mount. And once I disconnect the top mount, I can pull it off the strut along with the spring and the compressor. How easy was that? And to fit these KW springs, you're supposed to press off the bottom spring seat. I know I don't have a press, so a hammer was the next best thing. But it did the job. And once that's off, I can clean up the strut and then press on the new KW adjustable spring mount at the bottom. Bump stop and dust cover, spring, top mount bearing, and then the top mount. KW suspension on. Next modification, which is not needed, but it's almost a necessity whilst we've got it out. The downpipes, we're going to be changing these for better ones. And shout out to Evolve Automotive for sorting us out with these, because these are going to make it from a 9 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. They're catless downpipes, and I believe as well OPF delete. So on European cars, you've got these horrible OPF filters which make the car just like a...
Do you help?
Yeah, what would you say?
They make it sound rubbish.
But these are going to fix that for me. Okay, let's put this on. Not only should the M5 sound better with these downpipes, it's going to be helping the engine to breathe better, which in turn increases the performance. And these cars ain't slow to start off with. As usual, to get the downpipes off isn't as straightforward as we thought. There's loads of heat shields in the way, along with wires and a bunch of sensors. With it being a V8, there's 2 downpipes. So that means there's 2 lambda sensors for each downpipe. I've got to remove all of these so I can take the heat shield off to access both of the downpipes. And now it's just a case of removing all the bolts and mounts so I can detach the downpipes from the engine. And on goes the new, fresh, Evolve downpipes. This job wasn't the easiest doing it with the engine off the car, so I can only imagine what this would have been like if the engine was in. So it should be saving a lot of time here. That took a lot longer than first anticipated, and this would have been horrible to do with the engine in the car. The only thing that we are kind of stuck with now are these probes here, which sat in the OPFs, and there must have been some sort of OPF sensors because they are electrically plugged in here, but we don't have any OPFs anymore. So I can only assume that this has got to be coded off the car. But luckily, we've got Malibu Performance for that, so we should be able to get it tuned instantly. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when we run it without these OPF sensors in. For now, I think we're about ready to get the engine in. First step is to get the engine and gearbox into position. And with 3 of us, it shouldn't be too hard to push it into place. Okay, big V8 engine is now pretty much lined up to go in. I really hope that I remembered to plug everything in, and now I've just got to slowly lower the car down, and I'm hopefully going to get a few bolts in the top of the strut here through the strut tower, which we replaced, and then the rest, well, I think, oh god, I hope, I'm just gonna have to wing it. I can't really remember much, but I did take a lot of photos. I'm just worried about where that one went, but I guess we'll find out. So I'm on my own for this job, but that shouldn't be an issue because all I've got to do is lower the ramp into place, and if I can get one bolt to hold the subframe to the car, then I should be able to line everything up off that. And I actually managed to do it, but I still haven't got the gearbox mounts in. It's just being held up with this huge jack. So I'm going to crawl under the car and line up all the bolts and get them in to hold the gearbox to the frame of it. And now the engine is fully supported to the car. So that means I can remove the engine mount and the car can go in the air. And as I can get underneath the car now, I can tighten up all the subframe bolts and then start on the electrical connections. Like the ground wire for the gearbox here, then connecting the prop shaft up to the gearbox. There's 3 bolts which hold that in, and then there's 2 supporting bolts which hold the prop shaft to the car, and it's starting to come together. There's one last thing though, the steering rack. I've got to connect that to the steering column coming out of the car, and this job is a bit of a faff. The steering rack pushes into the steering column, and then there's 1 bolt which pinches it and holds it in place. And I just about got there with a bit of a squeeze. Now it's onto the top of the engine, which is all of the wiring, and oh my days, there is a lot of wiring and a lot of plugs which need to be connected. But luckily on these new cars you can only connect them one way, so it's pretty easy to work out whether you've missed one out, and it's almost impossible to put a plug in the wrong connector. And I think I've just about put all the electrical connectors in. It's time to connect up the fuel lines. We've got a fuel feed and a fuel return, and then the coolant reservoir can go back onto the top of the engine. And then last but not least, it's time to connect up all the suspension parts, including the brake lines, because the calipers came off with the subframe. And that should just about do it. Hopefully. The engine is in. Either I'm getting a bit better at this mechanic stuff, or that actually wasn't too bad. It looks an absolute mess, and I'm in a bit of a predicament at the minute because the charge coolers, they're broken. I've got them over here. So this is broken. You can see it snapped off there. The other one's got a hole in it, but they haven't arrived yet. But I'm desperate to find out whether this thing starts, and also to hear those downpipes with the exhaust off, because you just know it's going to be so loud. And I know what you're all thinking. You're probably thinking, don't start it, but I kind of want to start it. I think I'm going to start it. Just to be a little bit safer, I installed both of the old charge coolers, even though they did have damage to them. But this should stop the car having a major air leak. And with them both installed, I can connect the battery up. And we'll see whether this engine starts up. Right, this is really gonna absolutely bob itself. There's no GPS, there's no coolant. I hope I don't regret this. Okay. That is insanely loud.
That's mental.
That is ridiculously loud. That was a almost first crank. Woo, okay. We actually did something. We took an engine out, put it back in, we actually fixed something. I think we've definitely progressed now, because we've got an engine which is running, a fixed strut tower. The belt seems to have stayed on. Good news. Progression at its finest. Although we still got the rear springs to install. But let's have a price update on how much it's cost to get to this point. The intake manifold, £622. And it was plastic. Then we move on to the water pump, which cost me £301. Fan belt, £53. Bringing the total repair bill so far to £1,346. But that's without the upgrade parts. Right, here we go. 1, is it going to be in the centre? 2, is it going to hold the weight of the car? If we can drive this outside after this, then we've performed miracles. Bit of play on 3 fingers, 4 fingers a bit too much. This is the accurate finger test. 3 with a bit of play. Let me just double check. Oh my God, I think it's like 3 with a bit of play. Well, according to my fingers, this is bang on. I think so. Just need it all tracking up. So far, it seems the new strut tower was a success. All seems to be in the right place. But I was dying to see if the M5 went in gear and I could drive it out the unit.
Every time you videos me, we're bodging something.
If the M5 managed to drive out with its own power, we can definitely say we've made some improvement. Here we go. But I think I was speaking a little too soon. This is how much can you take off a BMW M5 and still drive it? Right, here we go. Oh, I've got no brakes. I've got no brakes at all. That's great. Right. Now, although the car would start, I couldn't get it to go in gear. It wouldn't come out of park. It says to engage gear, press brake. So it sounds like
The braking engagement.
yeah, but it's weird because it let me start it because you can't start it without putting your foot on the brake. We think I can't get it in gear because the brakes aren't bled correctly. The pedal is pushing all the way to the floor, so it's probably not thinking that I'm pushing the brake to put it in gear. So we're going to try and bleed the brakes and then give it another go. And I'm going to check all the connections underneath whilst I'm there. Obviously the front brakes came off when I disconnected the subframe, and it must have lost a lot of brake fluid when I did that. So we're going the old school way first of bleeding the brakes, where I'm going to sit in the car, pump the brake pedal, whilst my dad opens the bleed nipples and gets any air out of the braking system.
Recycle.
To start, we're only doing the front brakes because they're the ones that came off. Let's see if that works. Despite us bleeding the brakes, I still had no brake pedal. It was pushing all the way to the floor and I still couldn't get it in gear. This is very new and, again, probably over-engineered. This is literally like... So normally on a brake system, you'd have 4 brake lines coming out the master cylinder, one going to the front right, front left, back, and the other back as well. But this one has 6... There's 2 extra brake lines which are going down and into this ABS module here, and it seems all the air in the braking system is ending up in these brake lines here which are going into that ABS module, and it seems the only way to bleed that is to plug in a computer. I don't know whether mine will do it, the Auto will do it. They use something called ISTA. But I'm going to see if that computer will do it, and it will like self-bleed almost, I think. So, gonna give that a go. But if we can't bleed the brakes, we can't put it in gear because it seems that the brake pedal is on a pressure sensor. So unless you've got pressure on the brakes, it won't recognise that your foot's on the brakes to put it in gear. This is, well, it's stupid. Once I'd logged onto the Auto, I could see a procedure for bleeding the brakes, which is all linked up to the ABS module, which seems to be that little computer sitting underneath the car. So I'm going to see if I can follow the instructions on the Auto to see if I can get a brake pedal after that. Say when. Okay, continue. Is it? So this thing is doing something whilst fluid is being pumped out? No.
When it makes that other noise.
We had to follow the steps on the computer, and it seems as if it was bleeding the brakes using that ABS module underneath the car, doing corner by corner. We might have sussed it, but I might be speaking too soon. Seems weird. Bloody hell, it launches it out, doesn't it? Now it said on the computer that we're supposed to have pressure going into the master cylinder. So we used this pump and then almost plunged the hole. As of course, we didn't have the right kit for it, but we'll soon find out whether that works. Service completed.
Can I press it?
Yeah.
To the floor.
You're joking? No. Really? Yeah. No way. Really? Yeah. What the What on hell? What the hell? Wow. Brilliant. So me and my dad did the procedure over and over again. I think we did it 4 times, in fact, just to try and get as much air out of the system as possible. And we got to the point where there was not one single air bubble coming out of the calipers. But still, nothing. Like nothing. The brake pedal was pushing all the way to the floor. In the end, we gave up on the brakes and then began to think it wasn't going in gear because it thinks the bonnet is open. But we plugged in the new sensors for the bonnet latch and tricked it to thinking the bonnet was closed, but it seems it still didn't work. We still cannot get any form of brake pedal. We've done the procedure many times. We've done, as you would normally, bleed the brakes many times over. And all of this is linked to not being able to put it in gear because we've got no brake pressure on the brake. So we're picking up where we left off from. This time we have an actual vacuum thing. This is just going to pump pressure into the master cylinder here, giving the whole system some pressure, which is I think what we needed last time. And then we're going to do the same procedure with the Autel and do it corner by corner, and hopefully after that we can get a brake pedal. Whether this is going to work or not, I'm a little bit skeptical, but let's see. We're starting off with the rear left caliper as it states on the diagnostic tool, and the pressure bleeder is taking air pressure from the front tyre into the bottle and then into the master cylinder, and this is going to supply a constant flow of brake fluid. And as we got to the front calipers, we noticed bits of air coming out. We were pretty sure that there was some air getting trapped in these huge pipes going to this ABS module here. It's just whether that pressure bleeder got them out. If this works first time, people are going to think we were like messing around the first time. Just because of that thing. Easy bleed.
Go and try it.
There's no way this is going to work. Not a chance. Here we go. See if we've got a pedal. I was skeptical, but as I put my foot on the brake, it was solid. Oh God! I've actually got a brake pedal. No way! No way! After all of that, I cannot believe that worked. But will it go into gear now? If this goes in gear now, because we have that solid brake pedal, it's a miracle. Okay, ignition on. Okay. Still got a brake pedal. Yes! Yes! It goes in drive. No! Come on, how? It works! It goes in gear! It must be a pressure switch on it. Yes! So now I have a brake pedal and the car finally goes into gear after putting the engine in. Which now means I can continue the rebuild, and oh, do we have many parts to continue that build with. But we've still got to remove some damaged parts. There was lower front arms that needed to come off, and then a lot of damaged and cracked coolant hoses. There's almost 2 cooling systems on this engine. One cooling system cools the engine, and then the other one cools the air going into the engine, giving it more power. And you may notice I've still got the original charge coolers on the top, which are damaged, as the new ones haven't arrived yet. So I'm gonna have to put this thing together with the old charge coolers on and then swap them over once I've built up the front end, which is going to be slightly more difficult than doing it now, but I really want to get this front end on. This radiator down here, which I'm disconnecting the pipes for now, is the transmission cooler. And when I disconnect the pipes, it doesn't look like it's got much oil left in it. So we're definitely going to have to refill the gearbox with some oil before we get this thing out on the road. And then on goes this brand new second-hand rad pack, which I got from eBay, which was pretty cheap. Then I've just got to connect all the hoses, clips and mountings into place. Okay, we're actually getting somewhere now. Now that I actually have the rad pack on the front and also on each corner, I can start to figure out where this loom goes. Now, there's a few plugs which are missing from the end, but now I'm starting to figure it out. So this one would go directly here, which is a switch for the aircon, so I can order that plug now. And then this one down here, I still have no idea, but I think this has got something to do with the parking sensors. Not sure what that one is. And then also I have this huge loom over here, which I have no idea where that goes at the minute either. But the next thing to go on is the front crash bar along with the bottom oil cooler. So I'm just going to slide the crash bar into the chassis legs and then bolt up the supporting bars on the top. And then we've got to move underneath the car, because if you remember from the first video, to get this car started, we bypassed the oil cooler with this huge silicone hose. So I've just got to remove the silicone hose and then put the feed and return line into the oil cooler, which sits underneath the car. I'm going to stop here on the front end at the minute because I've just noticed something on here which is going to put the build cost up a lot. And at the minute, we're actually doing okay. Come over here. 32,500 is what it cost me for the BMW M5, and the cheapest M5 with the same spec, similar sort of mileage, is 52,999. I'll get back to that issue in a minute, but for now, we've got wheels to put on and something special underneath the car. This, oh my god, I'm gonna hit the right. Oh wow. Okay. This was the full exhaust system that came off from the downpipes here, and I'm sure a lot of you said that these are the OPFs, not what are taken off on the downpipes. That's what we've already done on the car. We've then got a silencer to silence the noise, and then a back box or muffler if you're American. But obviously, me being me and the cars that we do, we won't be putting back on the standard exhaust. We're going to be putting on this full Remus exhaust system. This is the new exhaust, and I feel like I could have made a mistake. Sometimes louder isn't always better, and this exhaust looks like it's going to be insanely loud, especially how this car is a 4.4 litre twin turbo V8. First thing that goes on are these pipes here, which replace the OPF filters. Then it connects to these pipes, which get rid of that center silencer. Then I've got to remove the valve system off the old exhaust, which allows you to open and close the valves to make it quieter or louder and fit them onto the new exhaust. And you may notice the new exhaust back box or muffler is considerably smaller than the old one. All I've got to do now is fit all the hangers in place and line the exhaust up so the exhaust tips are all in line at the back of the diffuser. And I was getting pretty excited to hear what this exhaust system was going to sound like. The exhaust is on and it looks so sick. Like brand new Remus all the way from the top to the bottom, Evolve downpipes as well. fitted snug against this exhaust. Now there's still a load of like braces and under trays and everything to go on, but I'm dying to hear it, so I'm gonna let Liam do the honours. This is gonna be so loud.
It's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, this is gonna be so loud.
It's going to be it's going to be a contender with the C63.
I think it is. We're still missing the charge coolers. We don't have any coolant in, so I'm just going to drop a bit of coolant in just so it's got a little bit in there. You're meant to vacuum fill these, but we'll get to that. But just so we can start it, let's do it. Put a bit in. Remus exhaust, evolve downpipes. Let's do it. Yeah.
The valve's open, so I must go have a look.
Go! Yeah! What's that in? Comfort? Oh, Sport Plus.
Sport Plus.
Oh, and now close the valve. And it's the tiniest quiet. It's on the tiniest. Okay, that's loud. That is insanely loud. That is ridiculously loud. No leaks. We seem okay. We've got to start up. Come on, we've got brakes, we've got exhaust. We are making some progress now. Just got to put all the strut braces and trims along the bottom of the car, and job done underneath there. But there's one thing that we are forgetting since we put the engine back in. When I had the engine out, we upgraded the front suspension to KW adjustable springs. But we left the rear, so we've got them to do. So here's me thinking the rear suspension was going to be easy, but obviously not. All I've literally got to do is take this shock absorber off, which is held in with one bolt across here onto the wheel hub. But to get to the top mount bolts, right at the top there, they go through into the car, which I thought would be behind this carpet here. But it's not. It actually turns out they are behind this parcel shelf somehow. So I think I've got to remove this parcel shelf so I can get to the top mount bolts and, well, go from there. So, well, wish me luck. To get to that parcel shelf was definitely not easy. I removed the lower half of the rear bench, and then a lot of the shelf was on clips. So I removed all the clips first, then the trims had to come out each corner, and then to actually remove the parcel shelf, I've got to dismantle both seat belts either side. And once I got the seat belts out the way, there they are, 3 bolts holding the top mount for the rear suspension on. Not the easiest of places to put it, BMW, but once I'd undone those top mount bolts, I could then go back underneath the car and undo the big bolt holding the strut to the wheel hub. Then it's only one electrical connector at the top of the suspension which needs to come off, and there we have the strut and the spring away from the car. To take the spring off, I'm going to use my spring compressors because, again, I don't fancy losing any teeth. Then it's just an 18mm nut to loosen off the top mount. Now the KW springs use the same shock absorber, but the actual spring seat needs to come off, and I found the best way to do this was heat it up and then just knock it down with a hammer. I'm sure you're meant to do it with a press, but I don't have a press, so the hammer was the next best thing. Then I can knock on the new KW lower spring seat, which is of course adjustable, which allows me to adjust the ride height up and down, depending on whether I change the wheels to a bigger size or not. But by keeping the same strut, it allows me to keep that adaptive suspension, which stiffens it when it's in sport mode and softens it up when it's in comfort mode. So it's a bit of a win-win situation with these. And now we've got it assembled, I can pop it all back on the car, 1 bolt to the wheel hub, and then those 3 bolts to tighten up on the top of the strut tower. And that is job done. Okay, she's starting to look more complete now, I would say. The ride height at the back with the stock wheels is now looking pretty much perfect. And then when we move on to the front, again, I think that is absolutely bang on. We've still got all the body panels to go on the front, so it may sit a little lower on the front with those stock alloys. And then also in the back, I've not put together this back parcel shelf just yet because we do need to send these seat belts off to be reset because obviously the tensioners probably would have blown, although the seat belts do still move, but we'll find out. It's better to be safe than sorry and send these off as well as doing the front ones, which are again completely locked out as well. And well, the front airbags are going to be a different story. Now remember when I said this was about to get pretty expensive? So far, to get to the point we're at right now with the hoses, the crash bar and the rad pack, it's cost me an extra £1,100. But I've actually managed to find myself a second-hand bumper from eBay, which is actually in the same colour as the car. The problem is, we're missing a lot of parts from it. And I think those parts have got something to do with these two wiring looms here. In this bumper, you have holes for a parking sensor there, a parking sensor there, there, and there as well. The problem is, there's some cutouts here which look for like little square ECU modules of some sort. And when I look on the parts diagram for this car, I can see that these little ECU modules are on each corner, and there's something to do with the sensor for lane changing warning or something like that, and each of them are £530 each, and we look like we're missing 1 and 2. And on top of that, it could potentially get worse. Depending whether this M5 was spec'd with a radar sensor, which sort of sits around here, or sometimes in the lower bumper, I'm not so sure, which actually detects where the car is in front so it can keep at the same speed as it. If I've got to order one of them, you can see here, they are £1,619, and that's just for the sensor, not for all the brackets and everything that needs to hold that in place, and not to mention the loom which goes to it as well. So this really could be where all the little parts sort of price up the build a lot more, unless we can find some second-hand ones which would potentially work, but then we've got the issue of probably coding them to the car. Don't quite know how it works. If you guys know, let me know in the comment section below. Like, do you think it looks better, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it looks more like a car.
Yeah, I mean, no.
But I just don't. Yeah, I just don't like BMW.
Wow.
I'm so sorry.
Screensaver have been and fitted a brand new windscreen, which costs £400. Bringing the total bill to £35,346. I just hope I don't regret putting that new windscreen in by the time I get to changing the dashboard later in the video. But good news is, we've had some parts arrive. Oh! These are uprated charge coolers, which are going to replace the broken charge coolers that we put on just to get this car running. Massive thanks to Imran at Evolve for sorting these. These are CSF charge coolers, and I assume they're gonna cool the charge a lot better. And I'm right. Unlike your normal intercooler which sits on the front of the car, these charge coolers are water cooled. A separate water pump pumps water through radiators on the front of the car that you can see here. The water is then cooled by the air, and it's then sent straight through the charge coolers. And at the same time, the turbo is pushing hot air through the charge cooler, which is being cooled by the water going through it. Then it leaves the charge cooler and goes straight into the engine. All that's left for me to do is fit the new ones. At the bottom of the charge cooler, you can see the throttle body here, and then right at the top, you can see the turbos. Because of how compact this engine bay is, it makes it really difficult to do anything on the car with the engine inside. So getting these charge coolers off wasn't easy. But once they are off, I can transfer everything off the old ones onto the new ones, like the two boost pressure sensors, which do exactly what they say on the tin. They tell the ECU how much air the engine's getting, and then can adjust the air-fuel ratio based on those figures. So they're pretty vital sensors. And then just to finish up, there's a few little hoses left, and that is looking loads better. We can nearly add coolant to the system. Now I was just getting excited to finally put some coolant in here, and then Chris noticed something. Take a look down here. That bottom hose there has a pretty big hole in it. I'm going to order one of them now from BMW so we can finally get the coolant in it. Now it's time to tackle the electronics of the car, and this is where it gets expensive. And I'm just gonna throw everything in the deep end now. This was 1,600 quid for the pair of headlights, and I just hope that this is gonna work. Headlights are my nemesis, especially on newer cars. They have so many different variations that even one difference can cause them not to work. On this M5, I think I've got the right part numbers, and there's only 1-digit difference between the left-hand side headlight and the right-hand side headlight. First one.
Let's get it on.
Down the back. Okay, that's plugged in. Okay.
I think that's the better one out of the two.
Here we go. Okay. Let's just see if they work. I'm excited. Oh, it's on!
Oh, Jesus. One. Oh.
Oh no.
It's not a good start.
Oh no.
So we have one.
One's on, but not the other.
Oh dear. How you feeling?
Oh no.
But it might just need turning on for the
Those
first
ones
time.
look cool actually.
Try turn it on, you never know. It might just be like a...
You reckon?
Maybe. I've got faith. Ready? Okay. Good news is...
Is that one come on?
No.
No!
Hold on. That one's gone off. You're not going to believe it.
What's happening there?
What do you want to happen?
I want both of them to come on. Oh, no. What? How did that one not come on?
I don't know. That's weird how that one worked at first, then that one works.
Why doesn't it work? Why is it always headlights? Now you may have noticed there are 2 coolant reservoirs on the M5. And that's because there's 2 cooling systems. One cooling system cools the charge coolers, which we spoke about, which is the smaller coolant reservoir, which I think I'll get away with just pouring the coolant into. Look at that concentration. And then the other coolant system is for the engine. But I can't just begin to pour coolant into this coolant reservoir. The engine cooling system has to be vacuum filled, which means I need this special tool. The compressor is going to blow air down this airline and out here, which creates a vacuum sucking air out of the cooling system when I open this tap, and we should see a pressure increase, which hopefully will hold, showing that there is no leaks in the system. And this is the actual way BMW say that you have to do it, else you get a lot of air bubbles in the system. So let's do it. Now the tool is creating a vacuum in the cooling system, and you can see the pressure here. Now when I turn the tap off, we should see it hold pressure, but unfortunately in this case it looks like it's dropping pressure, which means we've got a leak somewhere. We've just got to find it. I literally cannot win with this car. There's another hole. It is in this hose here. Look at it, that tiny little hole there. Well, it's a good job we vacuum tested it, else we would have lost a lot of coolant. Instead of ordering another new coolant hose, I can see that the little hole is at the top of the hose. So what I'm going to try and do instead is cut off the metal clip which holds it to the plastic fitting at the top of the hose. And once I got that off, I'm going to trim the hose down to just above where that pinhole is. I probably should be using a Dremel, but it was in my hand. Then I can slide the hose back on the plastic fitting, and hopefully now the pinhole won't be leaking any coolant. Then it's time to refit it. Right, round 2. And after vacuum testing it again, it looks like we could be in the all clear. It's holding the vacuum. And because the cooling system is now pulling a vacuum, I can put this hose into the coolant bottle, open the tap up, and it's going to suck all the coolant out of the bottle and into the cooling system. That way we won't get any airlocks. And we're not even finished yet. BMW like to complicate things even more than that. Turn the ignition on. Select the hottest temperature on the AC. Now this is not a joke. This is the actual way BMW tell you how to properly bleed the cooling system. The heater has got to be on the highest setting with the fans on the lowest setting. After that, I've then got to hold the accelerator down for 10 seconds with the ignition on, which should activate some kind of self-bleed system with all the water pumps on the car. And you can hear it working away now. Then you're supposed to let it sit there for 12 to 13 minutes. So whilst I wait for that to finish, I use those 12 or 13 minutes to start putting more of the car together at the front end. Now when I first bought the car, it didn't even have a front end on it. It was completely obliterated. So assembling all of this was a little difficult, as it's something that I never took off in the first place. Before we get onto the electrical stuff and the bodywork, there is one final thing that we're missing on the engine, and that is air filters. And of course, we've not gone for stock filters. I'm excited about this one. I have already opened it because I couldn't wait. Again, shout out to Evolve Automotive. Imran there. Check these bad boys out. Venturi intakes. The way these work is basically a cone air filter, but the other way round, which actually makes like way more sense because the centrifugal there's like a centrifugal flow rather than small to big. It's big to small, which creates a centrifugal flow. Force. They're gonna go each side here, and I want to hear what they sound like as well. I don't know whether it's going to affect the sound, maybe it's going to sound more Darth Vader-y, but let's fit these on, and then the engine is done and dusted, hopefully, fingers crossed. Then we've got the rest of the car to deal with. Let's get these on. First thing to go on with this induction kit is a heat shield. It's pretty obvious what they do, and they go both sides of the engine because there's 2 air filters on this car. Then there's some protective tape to run around the inside of this part, because then the carbon air filter housing slides right through them, and that tape prevents it from being scratched up. And then it's pretty self-explanatory from there. They fit in the exact same way the stock filters would have fit in. And whilst I was doing that, Kevin decided to start recycling. And there was 2 final pieces to go on, the air shrouds at the front, which should help guide that cool air into the new induction system. Look at them. That is full carnage now. I've got to give the engine bay a bit of a clean over, and also some little brackets which sort of sit here and then rest on there for the heat shield. But I cannot wait to start this thing and just sort of listen to see if these make any difference to the sound. We know the performance is probably going to increase, but I don't know about the sound. Then we have these air intakes which direct the cold airflow in there and hopefully to these big filters, but it's not really going to be directing anything stood still. But Hannah is about to start it now, and we're going to, I know how much you love this BMW.
Great.
But now that we've got the coolant in, we can actually run this car to temperature and give it a few revs as well. Let's see if it's going to sound any different. I don't know. Well, I can't hear anything over the exhaust. I can't hear any difference over here, but the exhaust is so loud. How are we looking? Got engine management light on. Tyre pressure. Restraint system.
Why are you doing all this when the airbags still need doing?
What?
Why are you doing all this when the airbags need doing?
Hannah was right. I'd gotten a little carried away with the upgrades when there's still so much more to repair on this M5. But just look how good it looks. I just finished all that and then realised I've missed these things off. Turbo inlet pipes. They look absolutely mental. I did think the stock ones looked a bit restrictive, that they're plastic and that. I better get these on. Okay, this is the last upgrade before we carry on repairing this M5. And this one doesn't count because it was part of the induction kit. But after all this, it should finish off any work that we need to do to the engine. Look at that, that is one mental looking engine bay. Full carbon intakes now, all the way to the turbos, and then with the gold charge coolers. But we've still got, well, this to deal with, and we've still got, well, all of this to deal with. Okay, I've been putting it off long enough. We need to do this dashboard. As you all may know by now, there are a lot of airbags in this M5. And when airbags deploy, especially passenger side airbags, most of the time, it means you've got to remove the full dashboard. But not only is the passenger side airbag gone in this car, the curtain airbags have gone, the steering wheel airbag has gone, and also the knee airbag has gone. Now, because we can't repair the dashboard that's already in the M5, the benefit of us buying a completely new one is that we can see where all the bolt holes are, where this thing comes off. We can see the holes there and there. But the painful ones are these two ones here, which means we're gonna have to take out the whole center console to get to those bolts. But other than that, I don't think it looks too bad. But I've said it now, ain't I? If you ever think about doing a dashboard at home, I'd advise you the best thing to do is remove both seats first. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I couldn't imagine removing a dashboard without removing the seats first. It just gives you that much more room to move around the car. And look at the mess inside this M5. Now, these seats are far from light. There's a huge electrical loom that plugs into the bottom of them, and they are fully electric, which made it that much more difficult to pull them out. Now, I'm gonna have to remove this center console here to access the two bolt holes that we can see on the new dashboard, which look like they attach it to the frame of the car. And to do so, I'm gonna start from the back of the center console and work my way forward. The first time I ever removed a dashboard to do an airbag was last year on the Golf R. And since then, we've done plenty. And from what I've learned, you just can't cut corners. Sometimes I try and get the dashboard out without taking the center console, and it always comes down to having to take that center console out. So I'm not going to beat around the bush this time. I've found the two 10mm at the front of the center console which hold it to the chassis. Then I've just got to find the rest of the 10mm which do the same job. Another good technique that I used on the Porsche GT3 out in Florida was that every time I removed a bolt, I put it back in the hole where it came from after I pulled the trim out. That way it's really easy to organise where exactly the bolts came from. And now I can just about access two bolts which hold the center console to the dashboard. We're nearly there. Now the craziest thing about this, what I've just found out, is to remove this center console, you've got to remove the dashboard, which makes no sense. Even though I've undone those two bolts there and all the 10mm holding the center console to the frame of the car, I can lift it, but I can't pull it out because of the way the dashboard is shaped here. So if you look, when I pull it, I cannot slide it out because the dashboard overlaps it. But the good news now is that I should be able to remove the dashboard without removing all of this, even though I had to remove all of this to get to those bolts there. You live and you learn. So now I'm moving on to getting that dashboard finally out. But before I get to that, I've got to remove the steering wheel, along with the steering wheel airbag. I've taken the clock spring up just to make sure it doesn't spin when I remove it, as we've made that mistake before. And then I'm going to remove the wiper stalks. This is so when the dashboard is finally loose, I can pull it up over the steering column. And the more stuff you remove, the more bolts you reveal. And we just got to work through it bit by bit. Some will be in obvious places, and some not so obvious places. But having that new dashboard ready to hand made life so much easier, because now we can see where everything is. I can see here on the right hand side, there's about 3 or 4 bolts which attach it to the frame. And one of them was hiding inside this compartment on the right hand side here. In fact, I think there was 2 there. Another bit of advice I'd say when doing a dashboard is make sure you're going to remove it and put the new one back in on the same day. That way your memory is fresh. And the longer you leave it, the more you forget about where things went. But if you are planning on doing it over multiple days, then take loads of photos on your phone. I think one of the hardest things about getting it back in is working out where all the wiring routed to. And if you don't get that right the first time, you could end up taking it back out again to reroute the wires, which is really frustrating. But right now, I've just about got enough wiggle room to slide the center console backwards and finally get that dash out once and for all. Yeah, I did it. Old dashboard is out. Actually, wasn't too bad. I might actually be getting a little bit better at this thing. I've certainly had a lot of practice. New dashboard on here. Now, this come with a passenger side airbag already bolted in. Full dashboard was £1,100, which I think is quite expensive for a dashboard with airbag, but it's because it's got this heads-up display malarkey as well, so you've got to make sure it's right. In fact, yeah, the stitching is exactly the same. I think it's like grey stitching. Full leather dashboard. Yeah, I think now, what time is it?
9:36.
9:36. Let's get this dash back in by
10:36.
Oh yeah, 10:36.
Yeah,
let's go. It was a race against time. Could we get the new dashboard in within 1 hour? I think we're probably being a little ambitious, but now we know where everything goes, I can't see why not. Okay, 10:15. We've got 15 minutes left, Liam.
Smashing it.
It's just plugs now, look. It's just plugs.
Yeah, it's just plugs.
Plugs. I'm an electrician, and electricians just plug stuff in apparently. So
Yeah, all you do is plug stuff in.
plugs and plugs. They just plug in.
Yeah, there isn't many plugs. Okay, let's do some plug-in. It's actually the plug-in which makes this job time-consuming. You can't rush something like this. If you leave one of those connectors not plugged in, then there's something on the dashboard that's not going to work. And I don't want to be the guy that has to take it all apart to plug one tiny connector back in. But me and Liam were making good headway. We're now getting the instrument cluster back in, and I was working on the left-hand side of the car getting all the trims in. It made life so much easier that I'd left the bolts in the holes that they came out of, as that I wasn't hunting round for a bolt that I'd placed in the middle of nowhere. Finally, the dash was in, the steering wheel was on, and all we've got left to do was put all the center console back together. Which was a little frustrating because some things had to go in certain order. £329.39p. It's got to go up here. And that was for the knee airbag, and that was directly from BMW. I couldn't find one anywhere else. Liam, what's the time? 10:30.
Yeah, 10:30. 10:25.
Yeah, 10:30.
We've got how many? 10 minutes to spare?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 minutes to
We
spare.
did it. We absolutely nailed it. Check it out. Although we didn't do it. We were an hour over. It took 2 hours to put back in.
But we've done the center console as well.
And we did the center console, yeah. Do you know, I'd actually be interested to see what the actual book time for that was, because I think 2 hours, it was a couple hours getting it out. So I reckon 4 hours, all round job of doing this. And I don't have a steering wheel airbag yet. We still got to do the curtain airbags. But everything is all in. And back me up, Liam. How many bolts left?
There's actually no bolts left.
We're getting so much better at this. There's literally no bolts left.
Smashed it.
Whether we've actually left anything unplugged or not,
That's another story.
that is another story. So before we deal with this situation, we've got some unfinished jobs to do in the interior, and quite clearly, well, we're not finished. Just like the GT3, every airbag has deployed in the M5. And what's in this box here are some new curtain airbags. In the last video, we tackled the biggest part of the airbag system, the passenger side airbag, which required me to change the full dashboard. But we've still got a lot left, and one of them is the curtain airbags. They are held in with these non-reusable clips, which are a nightmare to get out, and then a few T30 bolts which hold it to the frame of the car. Remember, these curtain airbags have to be really well secured because when the canister ignites the airbag, you don't want the airbag flying across the car. And now we have the old one off. Here is the new one with all new clips and a brand new airbag canister. I tried to find these secondhand on eBay, but I had no luck, so I ended up buying them direct from BMW. But the pricing wasn't too bad, but we'll get to the pricing later on in the video. But now the curtain airbag is installed, I can start putting back all the trim pieces and start making the M5 interior look like an interior again. And of course, I've got to do the same on the driver's side. Job done. Curtain airbags in. There is one more airbag to go, and that is, of course, the steering wheel airbag. This one was broken, but before we got into the steering wheel airbag, I need to remove this steering wheel because we've got some goodies for it. This is the old paddle shifter, and wait there. Imran from Evolve has got us some new uprated paddle shifters. To disconnect the electrics from the old paddle shifters, there's just a slide pin that we need to push out, and then the electrics literally just pull off the old paddle shifters. Then all I've got to do is get the electrics and the spring and connect it onto the new paddle shifters and slide in that pin back again. Once I've done that, I'll push the paddle shifters onto the back of the steering wheel. There's one electrical connector and one Torx bolt to hold it in. I'll just do the other one, then we'll put it in the car. It's the little upgrades like this that really make the difference when making a car your own. But let's not get distracted, we've still got to fix this thing. So here is the new steering wheel airbag. But we then need to move on to another part of the restraint system. And that would be the seat belts. You guys should all know by now from watching my videos, when the airbags deploy in a car, it usually locks the seat belts out. So it pulls the passenger or driver back into the seat so the airbag deploys not right in your face. Now luckily in this case I didn't have to buy 4 new seat belts. I sent the seat belts to the airbag team where they put on new tensioners. You can see the canisters here on every single seat belt, which still isn't the most cheapest of things. It's £399 for all 4. But to buy new seatbelts with tensioners from BMW, you're looking at around £300 per seatbelt. So it's not a bad saving. Fitting the seatbelts isn't too difficult, but if you don't make sure the seatbelt's in the right location when fitting it, it's likely that it would just stay locked out. So you have to be careful to an extent. Once I put the driver's side seatbelt in, I can put the trims back in to make it look nice and neat again. And then I've got the rear seatbelts to put in, and they locate just underneath the parcel shelf. The M5 is really putting me to work today. The interior is back in and looking fresh. The best it's ever looked since I've had the car. It's looking super clean in here. But one thing that we don't know yet, since replacing the dashboard, we haven't checked to make sure everything works. There was so many electrical connectors, bolts and all sorts of stuff behind this dashboard, and we want to see whether it works. We're on. Well, I've not started it, but the dashboard is all on. We've got so many warning lights. Oh, wow. Oh, no. No, 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 no. Okay. Okay, that's not working.
Does the car...
Oh. Oh, it did work. Oh, it does work. Sometimes it works. One thing that we do have on is still a restraint system warning light, and that's because we're still not finished with the restraint system. The next part of the restraint system is actually to do with the bonnet hinges, and you can see them just here, and they're on both hinges each side. I managed to get a new set of these hinge thingies from eBay for £115, which is still quite expensive for these little small things, but from BMW, it's a lot more expensive. These things are actually called pedestrian protectors, I believe, and they're designed to protect a pedestrian if you hit them. You can see the bonnet rises here when the pedestrian is hit to act as a sort of cushion for the poor guy when he whacks into the bonnet. Now, as mine have been detonated, they're not going to detonate again, and that's why I need to replace them. And due to how bad the bonnet was all twisted up and bent, I'm also going to be replacing the bonnet hinges as well. In my experience, I've found that this is a pretty good idea, as when you buy a brand new bonnet and you're trying to line it up, it sometimes can be really difficult if there's a slight bend in the bonnet hinge, and it's really difficult to tell, so sometimes it's a lot better just to get new hinges. But we're not in the all clear just yet. In order for the protectors to detonate, we need sensors on the front of the car. What's in this is, I'm still not too sure how these work. There is a sensor at each end of the car with a sort of vacuum line, and when this gets pinched, it sets something off in the sensor which pushes those pedestrian protectors upwards. And this, well, I'll show you where it goes. This line and the sensors slot into this foam piece which sit on the crash bar. And I assume if that airline gets a pinch or registers an impact, then it will send a signal to the pedestrian protectors to pop the bonnet hinges upwards. And with those fitted, I can now slide it onto the front crash bar. And then it's on with the new wiring loom which I had to buy from BMW. Again, more expense. Each one of these plugs is going to plug into something I know is going to be expensive because it's electrical. But the good news, the restraint system is almost there. One final thing. The channel's all-time favourite, the pyro fuse. This thing breaks when the airbags deploy, stopping you from starting the car, because what it does, this pyro fuse goes on this side here. All this fuse does is isolate the power going directly to the starter motor, so you can no longer start the car. Now, to get a pyro fuse from BMW, you have to buy this full section, like most cars, which is over £550. But just Google the part number of the pyro fuse, $21.99 off eBay, and they're used on, in fact, most cars. Even Rolls-Royce use this. Let's get it in. If you've missed a few episodes, then we've been able to start the car by bypassing the pyro fuse. And if you ever buy a crash damaged car which won't start, this is the best place to start. We can bypass it from moving the cable which sits on the pyro fuse over to the main body electrics. Again, it's super sketchy, but it seems to work for short-term use anyway. But now that I've got all the airbags and restraint system in, I feel comfortable enough to refit the pyro fuse. And luckily, on the BMW, it's not in a too difficult position. Moving on to my headlight situation. I bought 2 second-hand headlights, and even though they're the right part number, only one seems to be working. Oh, no. What? How did that one not come on? These were £800 each, and I hope it's money not wasted. So the left headlight, for no reason at all, doesn't work, but the right one works completely fine. So apparently, I've been speaking to Defined Coding on Instagram, and he says now a lot of the electrical parts and the modules on BMWs and a lot of new cars are locked to the VIN of that car, especially if you're putting on a second-hand part. It's trying to stop people from stealing parts and then putting them on other cars. We could potentially have a stolen headlight, or all we need to do is code it to the car, which is more than likely. I don't think it'll be stolen, but we're about to find out. I had to plug this cable into an OBD port, which then goes to an Ethernet cable on the laptop. Then Defined Coding was able to remotely code the car. Is one... Okay. One's just came on already. That was like 2 seconds. Come on, Defined Coding, you absolute legend. That was like 3 seconds, done. Legend. Here's the plan. There's an issue which we're going to get to, but of course we're missing body panels, and this has got to go to the body shop at some point in its life. This is the old wing or fender if you're American. Thought it was savable, doesn't look that bad, but this has been dented, that maybe could have been pulled out. In fact, oh no, it's all been creased up, that's why. Yeah, the whole thing's creased. So, I looked on eBay, couldn't find any. But from BMW, about a couple of £100 for a brand new wing from BMW, so at least guaranteed fitment. I just want to bolt it in with a few bolts because of course the body shop's got to take it back out and they're going to go mad at me if I put it in properly. It's looking better already. We've got the plastic stuff to still take out that. That's one wing on. Next step, bonnet. Here we go. A brand new BMW bonnet as well, which surprisingly was cheap. We'll get to all the prices at the end. This was a lot cheaper than buying a brand new second-hand one off eBay. In fact, it was around the same sort of price, but the convenience of having a new one. Chris,
There we go.
you on? You all good? Good. Finally, the M5 is starting to come together. If it wasn't for that one mistake. In the last video, I vacuum filled the coolant and actually got it running until, well, this happened. Coolant started to fly out of somewhere and it was being thrown onto the auxiliary belt, which made it so difficult to find out where it was coming from. So there's actually two mistakes I've made here, and one, I think the coolant line is this bottom one here, and turns out I think it's rubbing on the belt and it's rubbed through. So my mistake completely. I think I've routed a coolant hose in the completely wrong direction, which lead it to be resting on the auxiliary belt, and that's what's caused this hole here. And £77 later, a new hose has arrived. This time I've got to make sure it routes the right way. And once I've got that installed, I've then got to vacuum fill the coolant again, which means putting the vacuum filler onto the expansion tank, blowing air across it to suck a vacuum, and make sure it holds it, before putting in some more coolant. Well, it's holding vacuum, so there must be no leaks in the engine cooling system, which brings me on to mistake number 2. And actually, I've got an excuse for this one. It's not actually my fault. I used the wrong coolant. BMWs take green coolant, thanks to all you guys who commented and said I should use green coolant, not red coolant. I asked the parts place I got the coolant from for coolant for the BMW, and they sent me red. So I just trusted them, and well, I was wrong. Turns out it was green. Let's suck it all in, and then we could just about get the bumper on and get it out on the road. Now I'm really getting excited to drive an M5 for the first time ever. And with the cooling system vacuum filled, I've now got to fill up the charge cooling side, which has a separate expansion tank. But here's mistake number 3. You can see on the gauge that the vacuum was dropping before I even added any coolant to it. But I completely ignored it and still added coolant. And I soon found out why I shouldn't do that. Just when you think you've done it and bled the system, there's more. There's too many cooling systems on this car. Like this radiator here, this is like the only last few hoses I've not replaced. And you can just see up there, that hose must have the tiniest of pinholes in. And there's that one's going
Is this one here?
top of the radiator,
You
is
replace
it?
this radiator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, replace that radiator. So it's top one, and that is leaking out of the hose. You can just see it up there. Oh my god. That side is the charge cooling side. The engine side seems good. Charge cooler side, no good. Here it is. Hopefully the final culprit. The tiniest of pinholes is holding this whole car back. But that shouldn't stop me from getting this car on the trailer where I can get the bonnet, the wing, and the second-hand bumper that I managed to pick up painted at the body shop. But I'm beginning to think some of you guys were right. These are all receipts for parts. I'm not gonna write each individual part, but the remaining parts that I've bought has cost me another £2,700, which now brings the total build cost, including the car, to £39,569. And the cheapest one on Auto Trader right now, which is a similar year and spec, is £51,190. But that one isn't crash damaged. So we're really cutting it close, but I think we're gonna have an amazing M5 after this.
Now there's some obvious things that need fixing on the M5 and some not so obvious. And well, this is one of them.
even though I bought a brand new battery for the M5 because the other one was flat, I still have to jump start it with the battery pack. And well, let me explain why. The BMW comes with a lithium battery, which is super expensive, and mine was completely flat. So instead, I tried to replace it with a normal lead battery, which was still £250, which worked for a little bit, yeah, and then stopped working. Now it should start now with the battery pack connected. No problem at all. Just check the clocks out here. If I give it a rev, the clock start. It literally doesn't even have enough power for it to rev, and it doesn't seem to charge the battery. So quite clearly, I can't get away with using a normal battery on it. It even has a power supply fault on the dashboard, and although it does drive in and out the unit, it doesn't last long before it turns off. So I've literally had no choice but to buy a brand new one from BMW, which was just short of £642. Now we all know how expensive lithium batteries are. Now the good news is the bumper, the bonnet, and both front wings, fenders if you're American, have all been painted. We'll get to the price later, but for now, I need to get these fitted onto the car, and it's going to start to look more like an M5 after this. We're starting things off simple. We've got to take the front wheel off so we can get the wing on. And now it's been painted, it's going to start to make the car look more complete. There's a few bolts on top of the wing, inside the wing, and then one where you have to open the door to access it at the top. On the driver's side wing as well, there's also a washer bottle which sits inside. This holds all the fluid for the screen wash. And then finally, the M5 trims. And then it's exactly the same for the passenger side, apart from this one doesn't have a washer bottle inside of it. Both wings are on. The next step, which could be an expensive one, where it actually turns out it wasn't too bad. Now you see the loom on the front, and it's got all these different plugs. I've actually found out where these plugs come from now, and the main issue would have been if this car has a radar sensor for that adaptive cruise control which follows the car in front. But we know we've not got that because on the steering wheel there's no button here for adaptive cruise control to follow the car in front. So I didn't need to buy the radar, but the plug on the loom is still there. But I tell you what there is, these two things, which are parking assist things. Yes, that's how it goes in. I'll just cut the rest of that out. We then realised there was no part of the loom which actually plugged into those parking assist sensor things. It looks like we don't need it. I don't think we need it. I might have to take them out, and I could just resell them maybe, or I could have them in and confuse the next owner to think, why are these not plugged in? We'll see. Let's put it together. So potentially I could have saved some money on those parking sensor things, but I could always sell them. Next thing to go in is the little camera which goes between the kidney grills, and after that the car needs an ambient air temperature sensor. Problem was, there was two plugs which this could potentially go in. Only way to find out which one it was for Liam to get in the car.
Yep. Yep, straight away. Yeah, yep. Sensational.
Next up, it's the kidney grills. I got these cheap from eBay because they're not genuine ones, they're copy ones, but I don't think you can tell the difference. And almost the final piece of the puzzle is the front bumper. And it's really starting to come together now. But we are missing the arch linings on both sides, so we're gonna have to order them from BMW. Now with this on like this, we can see whether the parking sensors work, because if they don't, we've got to jack it back up. In drive. Yeah! Yeah! The beeping and the camera. The camera's on! No, is it
Yeah. Shredded. You've shredded your belt when you're doing that.
Oh yeah. Okay, there could be an issue, which I knew was an issue, but thought I could probably get away with it. So this and this is part of my auxiliary belt. I remember when I put the auxiliary belt on, it looked like the bottom pulley was a little bit bent. But when I ran it, everything ran fine. But I did order a new pulley, but I put the whole front end on before fitting it. Thought, oh, it'll be okay. And now, clearly not. So maybe I should put this on. Lesson learned, I should have just changed it in the first place. Because now it is right down there and the radiator fan is pretty much in the way. So even though there's a super tight gap to access the 4 bolts, I somehow still managed to get it off. At this point, I'm hoping it is actually this that's bent and not the bit on the end of the crank because, well, it looks straight, but I don't know. Let's put on the new one. So with more tight squeezing, getting it down, I managed to get the new one on. And just to test whether that was actually a thing that was bent or not, I put back on the old damaged belt. I made sure everything sat in place, started the car, and it all looked good. We just needed a new auxiliary belt. Yes! It worked. We just need a new belt and then we can carry on the rest of the car. Come on! So a new auxiliary belt is on order, along with the front arch linings as well. But in the meantime, I could put everything back together. Right, whilst we get a belt and everything, we might as well figure out why we have this airbag light still on, even though we replaced all the airbags. I was hoping it was just a case of clearing fault codes, but it turned out not. Knee airbag, driver, resistance too low. Right, so knee airbag, which is under there. There was a fault with the knee airbag, and if you remember, we bought a brand new one from BMW in the previous videos you can see here. So there's got to be something wrong with either the airbag or the wiring going to it. I removed the knee airbag, but everything looked fine. And so did the wiring going to it. So we've got to now test whether there's any faults with the knee airbag. The maximum it's meant to be is 5.4 and the minimum it's meant to be is 1.3 and it's 0. So the airbag was reading 0 ohm when it was plugged in and 25 ohm when it wasn't plugged in. So the airbag is shorting out when it's plugged in, indicating it's a problem with the airbag. But the only thing I could do now is install it back in place because I wanted to get the car on the road, but later we'll try and return it to BMW. So it's defective then?
Yeah.
Because it's plugged in?
Yeah, it's defective.
It is defective, so
It's collided.
looks like we're going to BMW tomorrow.
For a lot of things.
For a lot of things, yeah. We are now so close to getting the M5 back on the road for the first time since the accident. But one thing that we haven't done is put fresh oil in it, which is going to be needed, especially as this will be going on the dyno later in the video. Oil filter changed, and by now BMW have delivered the rest of the under trays and the front arch linings as well. As for the knee airbag, well, that's a different story, and we're going to have to cover that later in the video. But the front arch linings are now in, looking really smart, along with the rest of the under trays. Down comes the M5, and in goes 9.5 litres of oil. And then last but definitely not least, the freshly painted bonnet, which Hannah has come to help me put on. This is going to be one of the most fiddliest part of the jobs, getting the bonnet and all the panel gaps lining up correctly. Best way I've found is leave the bonnet loose, close it without the bonnet latches, and edge it around till you get it perfect. And there it is, all the engine and the engine plastics all in place. Looking really smart. And that is one BMW M5. The satisfaction is real. And actually, Hannah, I'm going to let you do, because you love BMW so much, you're going to get to do the final piece.
I'm going to put it on wonky.
No, I don't think you can. You can do it. No. Yeah. Do you like it now? No. No. Well, I think it looks pretty cool, but everyone has seen a standard-ish BMW M5. And now this is where things get interesting before we go and drive it. Time to add some modifications. Now what's better than no splitter? A carbon fibre front splitter, of course. So now that's exactly what me and Hannah are fitting. And the black standard rear diffuser is good and all, but what's better than that? Of course, a carbon fibre rear diffuser as well. So me and Hannah are fitting one of them. Also with the carbon fibre diffuser, there's little side spats which also go with it, which look pretty good. Now the standard black spoiler is okay, but what's better than the standard black spoiler? A carbon fibre one, of course. So me and Hannah are going to fit one of them. But turns out that the tape provided with the spoiler wasn't as strong as we thought. So we sacked that off and in the end used Tiger Seal to stick the carbon fibre spoiler to the boot lid. The company I bought that carbon stuff off didn't sell the side skirts, so I ended up buying them from eBay. And well, this is what came. It said carbon in the title, and quite clearly, look at the state of them. I don't know what it looks like on camera, but they are definitely not carbon. Some kind of fake copy hydro dipped carbon, well and truly catfished. They're going back. Now there was still more carbon to fit to the car, but I had an appointment at Wheel Mania and I couldn't let them down, so I had no choice but to drive it as it is. Almost forgot number plates. Thanks again, UMR Plates always sorts us out with the number plates. Let me get it straight.
Yeah. It's a bit wonky.
It's good enough, let's go. Well, I got 5 seconds down the road and I now have a drivetrain fault and I can't take it over 2,000 revs. This car is going to be one of them cars because there's so many sensors on it. I don't know whether this has got anything to do with the induction kit, whether it's got something to do with the exhaust. Don't know. In limp mode or not, I finally made it to Wheel Mania. The place for all wheels. And wheel refurbishments as well, of course. I don't actually think the stock wheels on the M5 look too bad, but there's definitely room for improvement and to make the car look more like my own. Well, I'm missing something. My number plates fell off. Okay, maybe that's why it went into limp mode. I've completely forgot what wheels I ordered because I ordered these wheels when I literally got the car because I was excited to get onto it. So this is going to be my first time actually seeing them in person. Oh, is that them? Okay, they look sick.
So these are the BMW M5 wheels. Gone for 11 with 21 on the rear. And 9.5.
21, I forgot
21
what
inch.
width I ordered, inch I ordered. Do you know what? I don't know how much they're going to work with the colour of the car. Like, do you reckon they'll...
I think it'll be nice contrast.
You reckon?
Yeah, I think it'll suit.
Because everyone's going to want me to go black wheels because they've already got black on, but just I'm over black wheels now, so let's see what they look like. So now that you've seen the alloys, let me know what you think. I'm unsure they'll work with the colour of the car, but worst case, I can get them refurbished here.
So when you're trying to find fitment for wheels, what's the process to getting it fitting perfect?
Just message me personally and I'll just get the bang on, no spaces required.
Just WhatsApp the number.
WhatsApp the number.
And George's right. I've been coming to Wheel Mania for years now, and they always get the fitment spot on. It's a proper family-owned business which really takes care of the customers. And if you guys need any alloys for your car, I've left their WhatsApp number in the description box below. Let's go blow up their phone. But now, the wheels have been fitted. Do you know what? I think it looks 10 out of 10, and I never would have chose this colour, but I don't want to show you guys just yet. I need to finish this car with all them electrical faults and all sorts before I show you. And there's more carbon to go on, so back to the unit. So, interesting first drive in limp mode, under 2,000 RPM, but I've been doing some research and I think I know why. But before we get onto that, we have some stuff here to fit and some stuff here to fix. So this part of the steering column here, which should move back and forth and up and down, it doesn't really, oh, sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't work. But this is the perfect time for me to not only change this, because one actually came with the dashboard and I didn't fit it, but also to do another mod as well. First step is to disconnect the battery, and that is because we're going to be removing the steering wheel airbag. And once the steering wheel airbag is removed, then we can loosen the bolt which holds the steering wheel to the steering column. Once that's off, I can then access the bottom panel which is underneath the steering wheel, which has all those switches and the faulty adjustment switch as well. And now I can remove that one and replace it with, hopefully, the good one. Once that's installed, we can move over to the next modification from Premium Bespoke AutoWorks. But in able to fit that modification, I've got to completely strip down the stock steering wheel so I can fit it on to the brand new carbon fibre steering wheel. This is going to look so good. And I've had this completely customised to my own liking. It's just a case of fitting it back onto the car now and doing everything in reverse. And there it is, one carbon steering wheel with a bronze centre line to match the bronze on the front of the car that I've done behind the kidney grills, and the blue and red stitching to match the blue and red stitching that is on the seat belts on the car as well. I really thought about this one. So, does this work? Yes. Now, this is now working. Carbon steering wheel looks good. But right now, I want to sort the issue out on why this car's in limp mode and won't let me take it above 2,000 revs. Let's do this. So the reason the car's in limp mode is because I've removed the OPF filters out of the exhaust, which aren't actually tested in the UK. But that should give us more power when we tune it, and when we tune it, it shouldn't be in limp mode anymore. It's gonna be so loud. To put this theory to the test, I brought the M5 to Mallory Performance, and hopefully after the tune, we'll unleash some serious power. We're just about ready. 618 brake.
What we're after?
Well, 617 stock.
Okay, we're after 618.
Even though the car was in limp mode, we attempted to do one dyno run just before we tuned it. We're looking for 617 bhp. First run, we got 468 bhp and a complete drop off in revs. Of course, because of limp mode. Now Phil's going to tune the car and let the computers of the car know that I've removed the OPF filters, which should give us more power. It's going to be noisy. .708 HP and 8 horsepower and 801 newton meters of torque. That is insane, and that's just like the base map. Do you reckon it could go faster? Probably. We're already making really good power, but Phil was determined to make more. Is it going to be quicker?
We have made more.
We've made more?
720.
Whoa! 720 horsepower. 104 more horsepower than stock. 720 horsepower and 802 newton meters of torque. That is insane. There is a link to Phil's YouTube channel below. Go check it out if you want to see more powers. What does it sound like? That is so loud. Oh my god! That is absolutely nuts. 720 horsepower is insane, but what's it going to be like on the road? This looks like it's going to be one hell of a first drive because it looks like it's about to throw it down, and you guys are about to see the car in full, complete-ish for the first time. Let's do it. This is what has made rebuilding this car. All the hours have been worth it for this now. What? So, the price, everything, was it worth it? There is another £1,200 to go on this, and we've not counted upgrade parts or anything like that because we've had loads of companies help us out, so thank you all to those companies that helped us with the upgrade parts. And remember, also Sytner has helped us out a lot with our special code MAC15, which you can all use in the description for genuine BMW parts, which brings the total cost of the build to £41,415. Hang on, I didn't add the paint, £1,250, which then brings it to £42,665 total build cost. So just over £10,000. I think without the help from other people, there's no way we would have done it. And the cheapest BMW M5 Competition, which wasn't previously crashed, with triple the mileage, is £50,499. So maybe we haven't done so bad after all. The question is, was it worth it? For me, I think so. I've rebuilt a car, I've learnt so much from it. So as you guys know, we've replaced every single airbag inside this car, including the dashboard, the steering wheel airbag, the knee airbag, and all of the curtain airbags. Yet we're still getting a fault on the dashboard for airbags. In the previous video, we scanned the codes and the only fault was the knee airbag. Although we bought a brand new one from BMW, so we found it strange it was bringing up a fault. When we tested it with the auto, the ohm reading was meant to be between 1.3 and 5.4. When it was unplugged, it was 0, but when it was plugged in, it was showing 25 ohms. After speaking to BMW, they've told me I need to bring the car in with the airbag connected so they can test it to see if it's actually a faulty airbag. But some of you guys have mentioned something, and this something that you've mentioned potentially could be the fix. But in order to try it, I need to remove the knee airbag once again. It's only held in with two 10mm bolts, so it's not too hard. So here's the faulty airbag in question, but some of you noticed that on the actual airbag connector here, there's supposed to be a clip on it, and I don't have the clip. Now this could be me being genuinely stupid, but if this works, then yeah, I'm stupid. Now this is the little clip that's missing, and apparently this thing's important. One of you guys told me that when this clip is inserted into the connector, a little bit of plastic sits between the two connectors to stop it shorting out or creating any static which could set the knee airbag off. That's connected. I'm not feeling confident. The airbag light was still on, then went off, then back on again. Still there, and we still have a restraint system issue. You know what, let's scan the codes and just check. So in goes the auto device into the OBD port, and up come a bunch of old fault codes that we need to clear off first. And once we cleared them, we could check the results. Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, it could have fixed it, Matt.
Wow, was he looking promising?
It could have fixed it. Has that done it? One clip was causing all this hassle, and now we're gonna have to go to BMW and say I'm sorry. Here we go. Let's see. It's gone!
Hey.
A faultless car!
Yeah, it worked.
A faultless car because of one clip. Well, we've got one more thing to do before we take it to BMW, and it looks like they're going to inspect the rest of the car. In the last video, we made a few modifications, including the front splitter, the carbon rear diffuser, and the rear spoiler as well. Now, I know some of you don't really like the modifications that we've done, but I think that's what separates it from a normal M5 to my M5. It's what car modification is about, and I think one thing that is missing to slide in the rear diffuser to the front diffuser, I'm hoping, are some really nice carbon side skirts. But as we was unboxing them, all was not how it seemed. They don't even fit. They were miles too short.
Right.
What? Nah.
No, that's,
No, there's no
terrible.
way. Okay, well that's a fail. Looks like we're going straight to BMW. This was it.
Yeah.
My M5 goes back to its home ground.
Gotta go hard.
So here we are at BMW Leicester. Now originally we were meant to come here to have the airbag fixed. They told us to bring it here with the airbag connected. We've managed to fix that. That's not going to stop us getting a health check and seeing what the technicians think of my repair, which wasn't necessarily done by a professional. Let's get this thing inside.
Let's go hard.
Mr. Armstrong, how are you doing today? You good?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, good. If I could take your key off of you, I'll just take it straight through, get it sorted for you, and then I'll be right back with the case for it.
Thank you.
Fine.
Look after it.
Of course.
Now before the M5 goes through into the workshop, it first has to drive through these posts called a faster line, which is actually pretty clever. So this thing right here, if I remember right, it does, it's called a faster line, and I think it, if I'm right in saying, does it check the wheel alignment?
Alignment, and then the bodyguard checks for damage, so when you bring it in. So just so if there's any discrepancy, if it was ever damaged on site.
It's never been damaged, that car.
That's fine.
And a few moments later, we were able to get the results to see if the wheels were in line. How off is it? So this is basically showing me now, yeah, the front is a little off. Yeah, we need to do a wheel alignment. It's not surprising that the front wheels are out of line, especially with the amount of work that we've done to it. But if I put that strut tower in even 1 millimeter out, it's going to affect the whole alignment. Even taking the suspension off and on again can affect the alignment. So we need to get it on an alignment rack before we jump to any conclusions that I've installed the strut tower wrong.
We're reading the key, so it'll bring up the service data, various error codes. How much fuel you got on board?
Any recalls?
No.
No recalls.
No.
Great.
Does it need servicing?
No, I did that.
And reset the light.
Yeah, reset the light myself in my BMW approved workshop.
See where it's been serviced in the past.
Sit now.
Sheffield, yeah.
Okay.
At that 1,000 miles.
At 9,000. It crashed around then.
12th of January, 21.
It crashed in February. Now the M5 was being taken into the workshop, ready for its inspection. But meanwhile, I had another issue. So this is another story in itself. I actually lost the key for the car, so I had to order one from here. And in the meantime, I found my key. This is a non-returnable item though, and that has just cost me a total of
£341.
But at least I got 2 keys now. Another problem solved. But back in the workshop, Rich is preparing the M5 for the health inspection. And there's something he noticed straight away.
Oh, earth board's missing. Cool.
He's looking for an earth point for his battery charger, but it actually turns out the e-Venturi intake was hiding it. It's covering it over.
Just a couple of things already seen. obviously wiring looms in bits. As you can see, that looks like it's been crushed as well.
Yeah.
And you see these all data lines as well in here. So obviously that probably wants addressing. That's probably quite crispy as well. Obviously all the sealer and stuff like that.
I wonder why it's like that. Why is the sealer like that?
I don't know. I wouldn't like to say. But probably something to do with new inner wings and things like that. As you can see, factory this side. As you can see, factory line, but obviously that is done by a machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously that one's been done by a Dulux dog.
I was going to say, someone looks like they haven't done sealant before.
Yeah, that's right. So that's just one of them things.
Now, after fitting structural parts, you're supposed to use seam sealer to seal the gap between each panel. The problem is, at factory, this is done by a machine, and trying to replicate the way that they do it is pretty difficult. And I was pretty terrible at doing it. Just look at that. This is how it's supposed to be done with the right equipment.
It's not a major issue as long as this is all obviously safe and solid. So notice that we painted the hinges. What's that all about? That's probably the cheapest thing to paint.
Okay, maybe I forgot to drop the hinges to the body shop to be painted.
We'll plug in, see if there's any faults in the system, and obviously work out what we can do from there.
So what they're moaning at is these little clips, which BMW put way too many in, so I've lightened it.
Okay.
You don't get them in Porsches.
No.
No, it's just in. After Richard already upset me, he's now plugging in the special BMW diagnostic tool to find any more faults.
Has it actually been mapped?
It has been mapped, yeah. So this won't wipe it, will it?
No, we won't wipe it. The only time we wipe it is obviously if we have to do a software update. If we do a software update, it all depends how the map's been put on and things like that. So
why, if it's mapped, what is it going to show?
We'll flash up.
So is that my warranty voided?
Yeah, then we have to send a case to BMW saying never touch this car.
As you can imagine, I'm not too worried about warranty, but from the sounds of it, BMW can find out whether your car was mapped even if you take it off before it goes in. If it went bang, then you can say, well, it's had a map, so we're not going to touch it.
That's right. But the thing is, even if it's not got a map on here, if that went bang and you brought it in trying to get warranty, BMW can actually search all the old history and actually find out. They can tell you where it went bang and everything else. There you go. If you want to take, and like the GPS signal knows where the car is all the time. So because it knows where the car is all the time, obviously it'll know that the car's static, but it's doing 120 mile an hour.
Yeah. Even if the M5's been on a dyno, BMW can tell. If you're static, doing over 100 mile an hour, it's a bit of a giveaway. There we go for everyone watching. If your BMW's tuned, there's no hiding it really, is there? They can't really.
It's all there in black and, well, orange.
Onto the diagnostic parts. And as the screen was looking green, I thought it was all positive. Green, I'm guessing green means good.
Green means good, blue means there's something missing.
Yes, there is one thing which is still broken, and I think this will pick it up. And after a few moments of Rich digging around the front of the car, he found what was broken. This is the bit that we knew was broke. So that
goes to your pressure sensor on your air connotator.
That's it, yeah. So yeah. Adam over there has ordered me. Well, I have actually got the plug.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't have time to fix that. But yeah, well, at least you found it.
Well, it's not that. We'll just move them out of the way so they don't short against each other. And probably be better. Hey, oh, look at that. There ain't many in there. I was expecting loads. You
doubted me.
So basically, the only faults we've actually got in there are for the aircon, because obviously it needs gas in.
Yeah.
And actually for the all-round cameras, because obviously that's saying the control unit can't be found.
Yeah.
And then that's saying that it wants programming.
We're pretty much faultless.
That's not bad.
That is not bad.
Effort.
And now he's on to the body inspection. It's getting a little nerve-wracking.
So it's just little covers like that and clips and whatnot that, you know, just want doing and
little tidying up here and there, bit of cable management. So far, so good. There's only a few cosmetic things that I needed to do just to tidy it up.
Well, yeah, I mean, after the inner wing, it's all in place, it all looks good.
So that's quite a good one as well, actually.
Yeah.
I was getting a lot of comments saying that because there was just a hole in the strut tower, people were saying I could have just filled it with weld and carried on. I'm guessing that's going to affect the whole structural integrity of the car.
No, because they're all cast and everything else, You can't do. That's why you see you've got all these little bits in it and just look like a bit, you know, these are all strengthening points all around this, and that's why there's so many of them laced out around here, obviously where the spring tower goes and everything else. You've done exactly the right thing, even though this was more issue. Yeah,
it was
exactly
just
right
absolute.
this
Yeah, it was a mission of a
because
job.
it's done properly. Obviously.
That's really good to hear. So the strut tower's looking good. Just a few things need tidying up. Now Rich is onto the rest of the car. Everything on the front right side is looking great, and on the rear right side's looking good. But as for the back left, we have an issue.
Oh
You've got
my.
a bit of a blower there. So,
Well,
yeah.
that's new. My dad was sitting in the back, so we'll blame it on him. That's only just recently done that, and it's only done like 11,000 miles now, but I don't think the springs have helped that situation. Obviously we're lowering it, so the shock absorber has got less travel, which I think will probably affect it.
If it's an older shock absorber, then obviously all of a sudden it's dropped.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get that as well, because the seals are going to be sitting in a slightly different place.
Yeah. It looks like the seals in the rear shock absorber have completely gave up, and there's fluid everywhere. But as I mentioned, I don't think the adjustable springs have helped that situation.
One thing with these as well, if you've had the bash pan off,
Yeah.
what I would always do is put new bolts in here.
Right,
Now,
someone said that.
there
Are they
is
stretch bolts or something?
Yeah, but there is actually a torque procedure for them.
Right.
Because what you can get, you can put them on, sometimes you're going down the road, you can hear a really horrible creaking noise, sounds like suspension's coming out of it.
Right.
And all it is, if these aren't torqued up in like the correct pattern, obviously you'll get the noise, and the noise will come from this. No leaks from the diff. Obviously all this oil is from this shock absorber.
Yeah.
It's proper gone with a bang, that has.
I don't know, it's strange because I mean it's not a high mileage car or anything, but I'm thinking the spring has not helped it a lot.
You know.
And that BMW, would you replace them in pairs or would you just replace a faulty
On
one?
an M car, replace them in pairs. If that one's gone, chances are that one might go soon.
Yeah.
Just purely because obviously what's on it and
I wonder who did that.
I wonder who.
So my dad drove this car for one stint at Gumball, and I have scratches on the wheel here and scratch on the wheel here. Yeah, Dad, you're getting the blame for that one because Matt was in the car, so he witnessed it. But other than those few issues, overall, I think we're looking good, and we're not far away from getting this car perfect. But what does Rich think? And there we go. I think, personally, we've not done too bad, but thanks for checking over the car. And we need a final rating. Every time we've done this, we had a final rating. If 10 out of 10 was a brand new showroom car, and a 0 out of 10 was how I picked it up smashed, where would you rate it on that scale?
I'd probably go about 8 looking at it, to be honest with you.
There were 2 8 out of 10s, one from Porsche and one from BMW. So thank you so much for that. I'm really happy with that. There's a few little things to sort, but I'm sure we can get there. There was a few faults that the guy found, that Rich found, that we need to do. One, including this rear damper, and we also have some finishing off modifications that we need to do as well. But the M5 is almost complete now. Just these final touches to finish it off. And from what it started off to what it is now, I think the transformation is absolutely spot on. Look at it in the sun. It actually looks really good on the iPhone. Let's get it inside, start the work. Jimmy B has just cleaned the whole interior as well. It is super fresh in here. I think this is like one of the best parts of the M5. But I was actually thinking that this car didn't handle the best, but after Rich found out the shock absorber was leaking drastically on the back left, that's kind of gave me a bit more of a confidence booster now, because I think that because he's found that, I know it's going to handle better when I put a new one on. But we'll soon find out. Let's get it in this ramp. Look at all this crazy stuff as well. How is it doing that? That's mental. Here is the part in question. Now, we ordered this from BMW, open, and it's one shock absorber, which was around 500 quid, I think it was. Expensive. The BMW tech said he probably will replace it in pairs, but when they're 500 quid, I think I'm going to replace this one once. It's only done 11,000 miles, so I'm hoping it's just a one-off. The reason it is so expensive is because in the top here, well, I think it is, there is an electrical connector there which adjusts the dampening depending on what mode you're in. If you're in like sport mode, obviously it goes harder. Comfort mode, it's softer. So all fluid in it. At least there's fluid in this one, no fluid in that one. I think we have to knock off this spring seat as well. Let's get it off. Now, because this is rear, if you remember, you can't get to the top of the strut without taking the parcel shelf off. But we think, and someone's mentioned, that if you prise over this speaker cover, we might be able to get to the top of the shock absorber. So there we are. There we are. Okay, that's off. I don't think we'll get to it through there, but give it a go. But T20s, move them speakers, and if we can get to the shocks there, that will save us a big job taking all these seats out, getting the parcel shelf out and causing a mess. No, so you can't get to it. No, you can't. Whoever said that, you're a liar. They're mistaken. This is a thing, so many people comment and some of you are really helpful, and then some people, I don't know where they get the information from, but it's really hard to distinguish what comments are the right thing and what comments are the wrong thing. But someone did mention in a comment that we could get to it through here, but I don't know, maybe we've got a different card to what they were thinking, but we can't. So it is literally seats forward, parcel shelf out, so good luck. I've got a video to finish off, so looks like that's your job, Dad. You've got to move it forward in the boot, so the seats, boom. So there's a few clips, but don't lose them.
Yeah, they're missing.
They're missing?
Yeah, there's a clip missing there, but I know you leave them out because it just makes it lighter.
Oh, it makes it lighter, yeah.
So what do we got to do?
Don't know.
Why do we have to take the seatbelt off?
So that it'll allow you to lift that padding up, look, to get to the bolts of the shocker. Look at that.
Can you not take the strut off without taking the wheel off?
Not without scratching the wheel. And I've already been accused of doing that.
Yeah, I think it... Well, that's... Only lasted 10,000 miles. They don't make them like they used to.
Should have been under warranty, shouldn't it?
Yeah, is that not under warranty?
You'd have thought BMW would have changed that for you.
No, my warranty's void.
Why? Why is it void, Matt?
Apart from KW suspension on the back, adjustable springs, crash damage, it's tuned, it's got downpipes, exhaust, induction kit. Other than that, it's fine.
Yeah.
We changed a few airbags.
Oh yeah.
And we did some work which has to be done by a professional.
But you are professional.
Yeah, I'm professional.
None of that's got to do with a shock absorber bursting though, is it?
I think the springs might have.
Well, yeah.
Are you purposely trying to kill Matt?
Oh
my god.
Not me!
I wouldn't do that.
No, not me either!
Yeah, the molars are coming out, this is why the seal's broke. Why is it going towards me still?
Because you said
there we go,
you said he won't pin.
There is a special tool which the BMW guy said that...
Oh, shall I get that then? It's a hammer.
See, we are BMW approved until my dad walks in.
This hammers ain't going to do it. I've got to get the BMW approved one. Got it off.
We think the seal actually leaks because normally on stock suspension, that shaft in the middle will be sitting on the regular seal in the same position. But what we've done, after we've put the lowering springs on, the shaft is sat lower, so it could have, like, the bit it's sitting lower on is upset the seal and it's just weeped out of it. But this one shouldn't do that now because it should be used to sitting in the position that the KW ones do, I think.
Talking rubbish.
No, I think that's why I did it.
No, I don't.
The further down you go, because of the gas in there, the fluid in there, wouldn't there be more pressure the more you push it down?
There's more, yeah, there'd probably be more pressure.
So wouldn't you be putting the seal under more stress?
Yeah, but why ain't the other side gone?
It might be gone. It might be gone. He did tell me to replace them in pairs. He said it might be on its way.
Tony.
Yeah.
If my CV joint went on one side of my car, what should I do?
Replace it.
What about the other side?
What about the other side?
There's a special tool for that.
Yeah, it's called a hammer.
We have got to go to Lamborghini to pick the Murcielago up, which you would have seen already in the previous video, so we're going to leave my dad to it. So by the time we get back, it should be all done, I think. You reckon?
No.
No. Go get the Lamborghini. Okay, looks like my dad has finished up. New shock absorber on, and he has raised it up a tad. So I'm going to try and get the same measurement on the other side. so we do need to go up a fair bit. That hopefully should prolong the life of this one, but we'll see. All we're doing is twisting this up until we get roughly the same. It's not the precise way you're supposed to do it, because obviously different parts of the car weigh different, so it might sit lower on one side, but it's just the way I can get this done before we do all the wheel alignment and make sure everything's straight. Oh, I'm gonna be a while. Tell me you put coilovers on every single car that you own without telling me you put coilovers on every single car that you own. We are about pretty much at the same height, both sides. So pop this wheel on, and then we've got another modification we need to do to finish this off. Actually, there's another fix as well, but it's quite a finicky one actually. And here is the new ride height with the good shock absorber on. So that should be all dialed in. There's just a few fastener and fixings that we need to do, and also the connection for the aircon, which the BMW tech pointed out, which we might get to later in the video as well. But I think that's looking fairly level. I've already driven it, and it does drive a lot better. Now, we've failed at this 3 times. No, 2 times. So we've installed the carbon rear diffuser on the rear and the carbon front splitter on the front, which we explained in the main channel video. The first time we bought side skirts, they were fake carbon, they didn't look right. Second time we bought some carbon side skirts which didn't fit. This time, I think we've nailed it. R44 Performance have got us these ones. Well, they haven't got them, I did buy them. Here we go. Ah! Oh, yes! Got a kick out.
Wow.
Oh, wait, there's more stuff in here.
Oh, what?
Tickets to Silverstone. Tickets to Silverstone. It's not tickets to Silverstone, Matt. They've got like a little chain, and that's nice of them.
Can I have that because you had the Kit Kat?
Wait, no, there's more, Matt. There's more. This is unreal. Oh, they're just self-tapping. That's nice of them, though. Right, side skirts. We need to see if they actually fit. Also, whilst we're here, now that the M5 is pretty much on its final little bits of rebuildingness, do we need to get another BMW on the channel? Because I'm kind of liking the look of the G series BMWs, especially crashed ones. Oh, it is a lovely fit. Let's get them fitted. I know modifications aren't for everyone, and I understand that as well, but I think like modifying a car, people shouldn't be like scared of doing it because of what other people think. I think because I get it all the time. People can say, "Oh, I hate these side skirts, they don't look right," but why does that matter if it's your own car? I don't know. Like, I don't understand that.
This doesn't look like any other M5 on the road.
That's the difference. If it looks now different to another M5 popped up, and that's why I like it. Some people like looking the same as everyone else. Oh, probably shouldn't up on the side skirt. Yeah. Oh, that's made a massive difference.
It looks finished now.
Yeah, like that actually looks. It slots in from the front splitter down. That's solid. That's made a massive difference. I can't believe how much of a difference that makes. We have got an M5 to give away to Craig. He bought 3 tickets, £30, and he's taking away my M5 and £2,000 cash.
That's the worst drive I've ever done, all nerves and stuff.
You ready?
On the phone I was shaking like a leaf.
Reckon your neighbours will enjoy that.
My lass is going to be exactly the same. She hates little cars. This is one of my dream cars.
Oh, no, so
are
you going to keep it for a bit?
I'm going to keep it for a bit, yeah. As long as I can, put it that way, as long as I can.
It. What a win for Craig. I bet you're absolutely buzzing. This is the best part about it. See you later. Goodbye, M5.